Next on the agenda is an option to go to closed session. We are not going to closed session tonight, so we'll skip that item. And next on the agenda is public comment, followed by a board president's report. So two things, since we have so many people at the meeting, let me just address one thing in particular. At the top of the agenda, we've added our mission statement, and we did that because we want to really try to refocus the attention of the board, the administration, the district on the mission of the school, right? The mission statement of the school. We really think that's important to get back focused. Not that we haven't been, but to make sure we keep our focus on the kids in the school, the teachers, the staff. So that's been added to the top of the agenda. And then what I'm going to do is I've actually added a board president's report section to the agenda. I'm going to do that before public comment. I'm thinking that'll take, I don't want to underestimate, but 10 to 15 minutes. And then we'll go directly to public comment. I am planning to try our best to answer questions real time. I know somebody asked that question on Inside Fredon. I am going to do my best to answer questions real time between myself, the other board members, the administration. If there's something we can't answer real time, we'll take that question and we'll try to get an answer as best we can. So I'm going to go to the board president's report now, and I prepared a set of slides to talk through this, to use as talking points. And Matt was going to share that for us in the Google Meet. And we've got page numbers on each slide. So if you have a question about anything on the slides, please try to make note of the page. Then we can go back to that page to focus on your question. Okay?
Yeah, so John, I'm going to make the slideshow the full screen. But when you hear those dings, that means somebody's trying to get in. So I might have to go back and forth flipping out of your full screen just so you know that's what's happening. But it won't disturb or disrupt necessarily.
Fair enough. Yep. Okay.
But there are still people that were just flying in.
Okay.
All right, so let's go here. And you can see that, right, John?
Yep, that's it.
All right. So I'll just have to escape out if you hear a ding, just to let somebody in, but go ahead.
Okay. And just so folks knew, something I did in Inside Fredon and I've done here as well, and the board member email addresses are available on the Fredon School webpage. I put it on Inside Fredon. It's here as well. We are open for questions. If you guys have questions, please reach out. I think you'll get better answers from us, from board members, from our administrators, than posting things on Inside Fredon and relying on people to answer that may or may not know some of the underlying aspects of these things. So by all means, keep posting there if you want. That's fine. No objection. But if there's something board focused, please try to reach out to us. So next slide. All right, so slide 2, I just put a slide here to talk to the purpose of this presentation. We really want to engage in a dialogue with the public. We want to share the board's position and progress on the issues. We want to respond to questions and concerns. We want to take action on what we, based on what we heard, what we hear. And we do want to convey that this is a sincere effort. We're not trying to spin things. We're not trying to hide things. This is a sincere effort. You know, we really are passionate about the school, the district, and we care about the board. And we really want to try to make things better. So we ask you to work with us to try to reconcile from issues of the past. So next slide, please.
Oh, hold on one second.
Yep, go ahead.
And we're back.
Okay. So the Board of Ed, right? By definition, the Board of Ed only exists when it's in a meeting with a quorum at the board table. None of us individually are the board or represent the board. The board president is an appointed spokesperson for the board, but by definition, the board only exists at a table in a meeting with a quorum. It consists of duly elected volunteers that are passionate about the school. We're people, right? It's myself, Ben, Kathy, Arnie, and Jeff. We're your friends, your neighbors, your fellow citizens, your fellow taxpayers. The board is a member of and we're trained by the New Jersey School Board Association. We do take our oaths very seriously. We do have the best interest of the school, the students, and the town in mind. And understand in our position, we have to balance between those. We can't let one necessarily outweigh the other. We have to try to strike the right balance between those stakeholders and those interests. And we are your duly elected representatives in school matters. And I know there's people that have been arguing that the town doesn't have a vote on the budget, those kinds of things, and we'll get to that more later. But remember that the process has been for a while that you elect board members and we in turn vote on the budget, and we're supposed to represent the townsfolks, right? Now, I know that people may not all agree that we do that well, and that's certainly debatable, I guess, but that is the process, or has been until recently with the change in the election, right? Is we're meant to be your voice. Notice too that in the elections we've had in the past, it's been pretty rare that there's been more people running than seats open. So I encourage people, if you don't like what's happening, or even if you do like what's happening, get involved, run for office, and be part of the board. Next slide.
Yeah, hold on one second, please.
Sure.
And next slide.
Okay, so now one of the main topics I think people are really here about. So the public question and the board resolution, right? So the public question, we did put the public question on the ballot after the judge ordered. No debate about that, right? The public question asked to move the election from November to April. It's a subtlety, but there was no year specified. After the public question passed, the board passed a resolution in December to move the election to April of 22. And there's a number of reasons for that. So the things we were concerned about moving the election instead of forward from November to the April 22 and moving it back is the school has been in the middle of a pandemic. Our administrators are dealing with those issues. They've been trying to get the kids back full time and have been able to do that, of course, besides the snow situation. If we pull things back to an April of 21 cycle, as has happened now, it actually shortens our budget cycle by about a month. So it puts some additional pressure on that cycle. One thing that some of us have been saying that the judge actually affirmed is that we cannot shorten board member terms. So if the board had moved the election from November back to April of 21, we would have violated what turned out to be the judge's order. We would have violated the statute, and we would have violated what it turns out the judge's order was. And think about the fact that the judge, I think, did a really nice job with this case. I listened to the first part, the opening part of the case when he spoke, he summarized the facts. I think he really did his homework, right? He really understood the issues. He summarized, I thought, the facts really well. And this was one of his major findings, is that you cannot shorten board member terms. So there's been a lot of question and push about why the board didn't move from November back to April initially to April 21. And for me, that was one of the major reasons. The other contributing reasons for me and for board members was that we were concerned about the potential for an emotional vote. If you read through the posts on Inside Fredon, I think you can maybe understand why we would have felt there could have been an emotional vote this April, and also why you might be able to understand why we would be concerned about the potential impact of the budget if it was voted down. Right? I'm not saying that it would get voted down. I'm not saying that the committee would slash the budget if it went to them. But hopefully you can appreciate why we were concerned about the possibility of that happening. And so given those factors and long conversations, we had 2 meetings back in the fall, ending in the resolution voted in December, but 2 meetings where we discussed this at length. The second meeting where it was on the agenda, the board deliberated on it heavily. And that was what we decided to do. And it's my opinion, and I think the board members share this view, that we complied as best we legally could with the public question, but considering and balancing all the interests of Fredon School. So that was slide 4, in case somebody has a question about that when we come back. So next question, next slide, sorry.
Yeah, I'll let somebody in, I think. Yep. Okay.
All right. So the second lawsuit, right? The first lawsuit that was filed was focused on compelling the board to put the public question on the ballot. The second lawsuit was focused on compelling the board to move the election and I think budget, both election and budget vote, back to April of 21. We'd already passed the resolution that covered April of 22 and years forward, that the election and the budget vote would happen then. Matt, did you need to let somebody in?
I was just doing it between slides so we don't interrupt you so much.
Okay, that's fine. The district was named the defendant in that second suit. Right around the time, right a little shortly before we had that special meeting a few weeks ago, I got a call from Mayor Flora, and I took that call to heart. We talked for a while. He and I have spoken a few times over the past number of weeks, and he really made the case that the board should really consider moving the election and the budget vote to April of 21 on our own. He was really adamant about that. So I took that call to heart. We held a special meeting to discuss that, and I think Anthony, that's on the call tonight, was one of the people on that special meeting. And before we went into the executive session that night, I said, we'll be back in about a half an hour, right? And I really thought that was going to be the case. So Anthony, I apologize to you that it took so long. I did not at all expect it to be that way. I thought it was going to be a simple, quick discussion amongst the board, and we'd come out with no change. But the board deliberated for, as you know, three-ish hours, and changed direction in a sense that after that long discussion, we didn't tell our attorney how to fight this. We actually told our attorney how we wanted her to try and negotiate a settlement. Looks like we lost our slides, Matt.
Yeah, no, I was trying to let that person in while you were talking. I'm sorry.
Sure, that's fine. Yep. Okay. So when we came out of that meeting, we actually had directed our attorney to try to negotiate a settlement. And given that we already had a resolution that covered April of 22 for the budget vote and the election, we were willing to also add in a budget vote in April of 21. Now, the board was not willing to concede multiple years. And the part of the reason for that is that we were concerned about, as I said on the previous slide, the possibility of an emotional vote, the budget getting voted down, going to the township committee, and major reductions in the budget. And we know that the budget cannot tolerate that. And so if that were to happen this April, we would have wanted the ability to move things back to November. Be perfectly honest, that's what we wanted. And put yourselves in our shoes as board members. Why would you give up the right to do that if you didn't need to? So we were willing to concede and have the election April 21, pull it in to this April. But even though we wanted to preserve the right to bring it back if we needed to after this April, we did not have the intent to flip it back. It was not like we planned and discussed. We did not discuss amongst ourselves and plan that we would have the vote this April, and immediately after we would flip it back. So contrary to posts I've seen and what people may think, that was not the board's intent. The board's intent was not to give up its rights in case we needed to exercise them. I hope people can take my word on that, because that is the truth. And as I think a number of people know, the offer that we made was not accepted by the plaintiffs, and things went to the judge. So that was slide 5. If you go to the next slide, please, slide 6.
Yep, just going to check if there's anybody waiting. Okay.
So the judge's ruling for me in a nutshell, right? So the judge, again, his ruling, the factors that he used to construct his ruling, you cannot shorten board member terms. You need to have an election every calendar year. Clearly, there was no way to satisfy both of those without bifurcating the election. Now, the statute that we're referencing in this was silent or is silent on bifurcation. So it was not something the board that I or the board was aware of as an option back when we were discussing this years ago and and back in December making the resolution. And I'm not sure that the board could have made that type of decision on its own with nothing in the statute to justify it. But it went to court, the judge made a ruling, and in a way, it's probably best that it played out this way, because now we have a court order that allows for and orders the bifurcation of the election, which means splitting the election. So the budget vote happens this April. The next election is going to be April of 22, and the extended board member terms to April of 22. So the board is happy with that outcome. We're willing to abide by that outcome, and we plan to move forward with that outcome. Next slide. So I wanted to share a few other things because there's been a lot of press about the budgets and all that stuff, and I wanted to highlight some progress that people may not be aware of. And I'd be the first to acknowledge that the school budget got out of hand and the surpluses got out of hand years ago, no question. But the district and the board has been on a path toward right-sizing the budget. So the numbers that I'm citing here are in our 2020 CAFRE. The CAFRE is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. It's a report from our auditors. The auditors go through our books every year. They check what our BA has done. They check all the books. They issue a very comprehensive report. That report is available on the New Jersey District Department of Education website. And these numbers are pulled from there. And what they're showing is that things did peak for the worse, I would say, in the 2017-2018 timeframe, but have been improving since. So tax levy, the tax levy, and I acknowledge too that, you know, there's different ways to spin these numbers, right? So you have to be careful about and understand what's behind and what goes into these numbers, but these are as straight as I can possibly display them. So the tax levy in 2017 peaked at 4.85 million. In 2020, the year that just ended last June 30th, that year the tax levy was down to 4.44 million. So a decrease of $410,000 in 3 budget cycles. So I think that's some really good progress. The total budget peaked in 2018 with a spend of 7.22 million. I fully acknowledge that was a lot of money to be spent by this district, no question. And look at the spend this past year that just closed, 5.94 million, down $1.28 million. So again, I think it really demonstrates the focus that's been put on the budget by the board and the administration and progress that's been made. Something else that's been talked about and kicked around. So the Fredon School percent of tax rate. So if you've seen some of the pie charts that come out that show where your tax dollars are go, you know, Fredon School, regional school, municipal, county, those kinds of things, right? So in 2017, the Fredon School's percentage of that tax rate was 38%. It was down 4 percentage points in 2020. So that means is the percentage of tax that the town collects that goes to the school is decreasing in terms of the overall pie. And it's down 4 percentage points in those 3 years. So per capita, something that is still troubling, right? Our per capita per student, right? Our spend per student, 28.2 in 2019, down to 26.9 in 2020. It's still high. And we'll talk a little bit later about part of why that is, but largely driven by declining enrollment. And some other progress we made is we have a new accountant, and of course we have new administrators, that being Matt and Karen. So that was slide 7. Next slide, please. So declining enrollment, right? So I think a lot of people would agree with me. This is a fabulous town, a great place to live and raise a family. My wife and I have been here since 1993. We bought our home in 93. We've happily raised 3 kids here. They've been through Fredon School. My view is we need to attract more families with school-age kids and get the enrollment numbers up. And I think to help do that, and there's multiple ways, but one would be to better represent and market the town. And I hope this isn't antagonizing anybody, but you know, when you think about the infighting and posts on social media, if you read those, if you were looking to move to a town and you found that website and read those posts, would that make you want to move to that town? I feel like that would be a bit of a deterrent. And so I think that's something that we all need to find a way to do better. Next slide. So slide 9. And this is something that I hope people really focus on. So I pulled these names together. Since 2016, when the large surpluses first were uncovered, we've had 4 superintendents / CSAs, right? So we've gone from a superintendent and principal to now we have a chief school administrator and no longer have a principal or vice principal serving as well. So we've gone down to one administrator. But 4 superintendents/CSAs since 2016. And look at the BA list. We went through 7 BAs in that amount of time. That's an enormous number of BAs since 2016. Some of them were interims trying to fill gaps between full-time BAs. There's been a lot of churn. A lot of churn. So keep that slide in mind. Next slide, please, Matt. So current situation, right? Matt Beck is our CSA since October of 2018, just over 2 years. Karen joined as BA just a year ago. Congratulations, Karen. So she's here a year with us now, right? Stability and longevity is key to success on all fronts. Success financially, stability, staff, keeping staff happy, keeping education well for the students, right? If we want a top education for our kids, we need stability in the front office. We really do. But think about it. You know, would you take or keep one of those positions if you, amongst all the infighting, name calling, bullying, personal attacks that go on social media? You know, one of our past superintendents was referred to as an interloper on social media. I mean, those kinds of things do not help the stability issue that we face. And one other thing here too, you know, with the superintendents and the BAs coming on and being here so infrequently, even if you thought that the budgets were large, would you make a major cut in your budget your first year? I mean, you have to give these people a chance to really understand the budget, be familiar with it, make sure that trends you're seeing are persistent and not just one-offs, so you can take some action. And that's what's been happening over time, but it's taken some time to make some of those corrections to right-size the budget. And even with all that instability and churn, we still have had in the past 4 budget cycles 3 tax levy cuts and 1 flat tax levy in 4 cycles. So definitely a downward trend in terms of the tax levy and revenue, and trying to right size the budget. Looks like Jeff raised a hand. Jeff, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, maybe just for some that might be new to this meeting, just maybe can you do a quick explanation of the tax levy, or do you want to wait till later on that? Just so people can understand maybe what we're referring to.
Yeah, that's fine. So, okay, that's a great point. Thank you. Yeah. So, yeah, if you want to put that slide back up, Matt. Actually, go back 1, I guess. So 1 or 2. Yep. So the total budget is the total spend. And Jeff, thank you. That's a really good point. The total budget is a total spend, right? That includes capital projects, the roof, you know, whatever. If there's paving that needs to be done, just capital projects, things that are longer term, larger dollar items. The tax levy is a portion of the operating budget. So you really have to separate the operating budget of the school from the total budget to really understand what's happening, right? Because, for example, you know, if your house, if you save $10,000 a year, well, let's not use 10, but let's say you save, I don't know, $1,000 a year for 10 years to redo your roof. And then the year in which you redo that roof, that money was accumulated over the 10 years and spent in 1 year. But that's not part of your operating budget. It's part of your capital improvements budget. And it's the same concept here, right? The total budget includes things like capital improvements, whereas the operating budget is more driven consuming the tax levy. So if we could go back to which slide we were on.
Yeah, let me just check on people trying to get in.
Yep. Okay, so there were some posts about this, right? About the school having a large legal reserve and squandering money. So does Fredon School have a legal reserve? No. Fredon School does not have a legal reserve, nor did it have a legal reserve. But the unfortunate thing is that the New Jersey Department of Education user-friendly budget, which is not something we generate, but they generate from our finances, they label what really is excess surplus as legal reserve. I don't know why they do it. Maybe because excess surplus is not really such a great name either, right? I mean, that doesn't really sound so good, excess surplus. But excess surplus is the money left over at the end of a fiscal year that gets pushed to a future budget cycle. So at the end of a year, after you might have put some money in cap reserve, after you've paid off all of the encumbered items that you have, paid all your bills, money that's left over is called excess surplus. And so on the New Jersey Department of Education user-friendly budget, back when we first started generating large surpluses, money that didn't go to cap reserve was labeled legal reserve, but really was excess surplus and got pushed forward to future budgets. And so that's why the 2017, 2018 timeframe, the budgets got very big and the spend got very big because money was pushed forward and it was being, in some cases, spent, right? So, but be clear, we don't have a legal reserve. We're not squandering money on legal. Next slide. So surpluses, right? These are first brought to light in December of 2016. I can tell you that surpluses for this school, surplus are not by design. It was something that happened because the school was making steady 2% increases in the tax levy, enrollment was declining, and there were cost-saving measures happening. There were things like healthcare benefits were being renegotiated and costs were being saved with those types of actions. So it was really like, two things heading in different directions, with the revenues in terms of tax levy increasing, meanwhile costs were decreasing. So it wasn't by design, but it's more like things just things happened without really being detected until it was too late, right? So, but realize also it's a small district, and we need to plan for unforeseen events. Some recent unforeseen events were we had to replace the well a few years back. We had mold issues. There could be out-of-district placements that are very expensive. So we have to be careful, and our BA has to be very careful not to budget too tightly. You have to have some margin in your budget because if you get caught with an unexpected surprise, you would really be in trouble if you didn't have the money to cover it. Something that's been done with the surpluses, unfortunately, we're not aware of any way to directly give the money back to the taxpayer. If you could all help out and charge at the DOE and get them to make some kind of changes to allow that, that'd be a fantastic remedy, right? If we had too much money, if we have money left over 1 year, we could directly give it back to the taxpayer, fantastic. But that is not an option. The options are spend it, put it in some kind of reserve fund, or what we've been able to do, and this was actually in large part discovered by our board president from a few years back, is that we could put money in cap reserve, but use that to offset the debt service, the bond payments that are being made on the referendum that was done many years ago. So we still have, it's like a mortgage, right? We still have to make those payments. So what we've been doing as a board is we've been putting money in cap reserve out of the surplus. We've been earmarking it for debt service relief. Now, I fully acknowledge that earmarking that does not lock that money up. It's not a legal requirement, but at least it demonstrates intent for the current board and future boards that is what that money is meant for. Now, we didn't earmark all of the surpluses, but a significant portion, and we'll talk about that in a little bit on another slide. And it's not, and realize too, this was not a plan. It was not a plan to generate large surpluses and put it in cap reserve to pay off the debt, to buy points off the tax levy. That's not the plan, but it's more of a remedy. It was the best we could come up with how to handle the surplus funds while we're trying to continue to try to right size the budget and not waste the money, overspend the money, but to get it back to the taxpayer. And just my last point here we touched on before, right? The churn administration has been a major contributor to not being able to make the budget cuts because, again, these folks come in, they're new, they have to have some time with the budget to get familiar with it before they're going to be willing to make sizable cuts. Next slide. Slide 13. So capital reserve. This is where things currently stand. I know this question comes up with people. So the capital reserve balance right now is large, no argument. It was $990K at the end of fiscal year 20, at the end of June. We had a surplus from fiscal year 20 that was large, $456K, and that bumped the balance up to $1.446 million. So before people go crazy thinking we're still generating large surpluses on purpose, look to the right of this slide. It's a good explanation of where that money came from. it's a combination of expenses that didn't occur because of the pandemic, cost-saving measures that were put in place because of things like attrition and changes in staff, and health benefits as well. So walk through the list with me, right? We had budgeted for 4 charter school placements, only 2 occurred. So that saved $40,000. There's an out-of-district placement that did not take place. That saved $150K. A custodian left. We did not replace him. That saved $70K. Front office secretary left. Saved $25K by not replacing her. Utilities, $25K savings, right? Because of the pandemic, kids aren't at school, saved on utilities. Staff development didn't take place, unfortunately, but that saved $25K. Clubs and trips didn't take place, again, unfortunately, but that saved on the range, $30 to $50K-ish. And then health benefits came in under what was budgeted. So when you add that up, that actually matches the $456K, give or take a few thousand. So again, it's not that it was planned. In a typical year, that wouldn't have happened, but we will continue to adjust the budget based on those things. And we're not planning to replace those people that left just to run the budget up, right? That's not the plan at all. So those savings that happened will become part of the permanent budgets going forward. In terms of cap reserve, back on the left-hand side. So yeah, there's 1.446 million in cap reserve now, but fiscal year 21, there are capital projects planned for 180K. They're already part of this year's budget that we're in now. In fiscal year 22, there's 230K of budget of projects planned. In fiscal year 22, the board is also making a debt service payment of 124K. And I mentioned before about earmarking funds. 300K of what got put into cap reserve this year, so 300 out of that 456, has been earmarked for future debt service payments. Again, it's not binding, but that is the board's and the district's intent to use that money for debt service payments. And we fully plan to talk with the town finance person and make sure we have a good plan with them on how and when to make these payments, so we don't have steep changes or big step changes in the tax levy. So we're planning to meet with them and talk that through as well. And so the bottom bullet, right, shows a projected balance of the 1.446 minus the 834, that's just above it, which leaves the cap reserve at 612K after that spending occurs. So I put a little asterisk here, right? It assumes the above expenditures, notably the debt service payments, right? But that is our plan. It's not like we're presenting that and planning to deviate. That is the plan for those funds. Next slide. Social media. So I wanted to talk about this a little bit, right? So the Board of Ed, as you probably noticed, has not been engaging on social media. We are actually limited, as I think are most public bodies, by the Open Public Meetings Act. If we have discussions, if the board members have discussions, in our case of 3 or more members, that constitutes a quorum, and that will constitute a meeting. If we have discussions about school business with 3 or more members, that will constitute a meeting. So we're trying to figure out how best to engage online. A few meetings ago, we had our New Jersey School Board's rep come to our meeting and give us a presentation on social media, because we want to understand the latest views and thinking on that, because social media, as you know, has been changing rapidly, and we wanted to see if there were new things, new laws, new recommendations on how to deal with that. But the Board of Ed cannot go on Inside Fredon and start debating posts about board business. It would constitute a meeting, and we'd have to start recording minutes and records. It just doesn't happen, right? We can't engage that way. So I wanted to make sure people understood that was why we are not doing that. But what I've asked the policy committee to do, and we're going to hear about this a little more later during the meeting, that's the policy committee to look into how to better interact on social media, and also how to conduct business, emergent business between meetings. Because even rolling back to the case, the situation with the lawsuit, trying to negotiate, the board came out of that executive session during the special meeting with direction for our attorney. When she came back with a response from the plaintiffs, we could not convene another board meeting without advertising and giving enough notice. So the board is really at a disadvantage in terms of trying to conduct business between meetings on emergent situations. So we're trying to figure out how we can better handle that and maybe come back with a different type of response. But in the meantime, as I said before, please, if you have questions, post them on Inside Fredon or other sites if you want to, but reach out to me and other board members as well. Next slide, Matt. Board goals. So want to make sure it's clear. The board goals, these are in discussion, but we really want to strive for harmony. We've had a couple meetings with the town council since I became board president, and we've had some before then as well, but we've had a couple since then, and we're trying to make progress in terms of reaching harmony. We're continuing to focus on right sizing the budget. We want to make sure the focus stays on educating our kids. And I've talked, the board has talked with Matt about either recertifying or replacing or adding to our Blue Ribbon School certification. It's one thing that, when my wife and I moved here in '93, Fredon School had been Blue Ribbon certified at that time. And that was one of the things that drew us to the school, amongst others. And so I would like to see that either recertified, or if Matt can find a suitable addition to that certification, we would try to pursue that as well. So next slide. So just a word on social media posts, right? Please try to be respectful and factual, avoid making assumptions. One thing I'd really like to emphasize is be careful not to read as fact posts other people make regarding Board of Ed intent. Please come to us to hear our intent. But we do really want to reconcile. So I'll leave this slide here if we could move on.
That was it.
That's the last one. Okay, thanks. So then, so let's, let me just read the section on public comment. And then we can take public comments from folks. So when recognized by the president, please state your name and address prior to commenting. All meetings at which the board transacts official business must be public. Meetings of the board are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the business of the school, and therefore not public meetings, but meetings held in public. Once the president closes oral communication, no other questions or comments will be permitted. At this time, only agenda items may be discussed. So the board has also just, gone back and forth on whether or not to engage in conversation during the public comment. New Jersey School Boards highly advises against it, but I would like to try it tonight and see if it helps. So we're going to open for public comment. We will do our best to answer questions. Matt, if you see people raising their hands, then please let them in.
Yeah, it's hard to tell in what order, but I do see Jack Harris was first.
Is Jack unmuted?
He would have to. He'd have to mute himself. I cannot. Okay, we can come back to him, I guess.
Yeah, I'd love to give him first question if we can. I don't know why he's not able to.
It won't let him unmute. All right, Jack, is it possible just to type it in the chat then, like you just did? If it's not too lengthy to type.
Jack, I've had that problem before myself, and sometimes I've had to rejoin. Or maybe you can call in separately with your cell. Yeah, I agree. I would expect. I'd rather have Jack talk directly with us. Do you want to try and call in directly? Is there a number he can call in with his cell?
It's on the login info. You can try.
All right, Jack is saying if you want to have someone else go first, that's fine. And Jack, try to call in if you can.
Okay, so that was so then Amy Sweezy, I see. He's also muted.
It looks like Rick Smith posted the phone number.
Here, Amy, you unmuted for a second, and then you muted yourself again. Let's see here.
How about now? Is that better?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, great. I wanted to just thank you, John, and whoever put the presentation together. I thought it was very well done and informative. I agree with much of what you've said, especially about the social media part. I do have a couple quick questions.
Sure.
Number one, are you going to publish, because I came in a little late to the call and I missed maybe the first 5 slides. So are you going to publish the slides?
Yeah, we'll most likely put them on our community outreach page on the school website.
Okay, that would be awesome. I know it's Karen's job, but I didn't know what a BA was, what that stands for in the school system. I was curious what that is.
Great question. Yeah, my apologies. In fact, I was warned to be careful not to presume people knew too much of the lingo and such. So BA is a business administrator, handles a lot of the finances, oversees buildings and grounds, those kinds of things. But in addition, she also serves as our board secretary. So she really has a dual role. She reports to the CSA as BA and to the board as the board secretary.
Okay, that's interesting because I am very unfamiliar with this. I did put one child through the school system, not from kindergarten, but whatever. So I guess my last question comes to, that we're going to have an opportunity to vote on the budget. And I understood what you said, John, about, you don't want emotional voting. But how do we become more educated away from these rumors or innuendos or whatever we read about? How do we become more educated to understand, like, I, as not being involved, see the enrollment go down, yet I am still paying over 1/3 of my taxes, when you look at the pie chart, to a tiny school with very few students. And I think for a person recognizing I'm not involved and don't have a lot of understanding, I think that's the core of where people struggle. So I don't know, and I'm actually in numbers by trade. I'm an analyst, but I don't know the workings of it. How do citizens get educated to really understand the difficulties and not vote emotionally? That's my question.
Great question. I thank you for that. So a couple of answers, right? So to start with, the school, our CSA and BA will hold a budget workshop session in the very near future, and then a budget presentation. Both of those are things that can be attended by the public, and in the budget presentation is when you'll see the budget presented in an overview format. But in addition to that, on the school website, there are 2 forms of the budget: the budget presentation that I just mentioned, that's done that provided to the public, and then the Department of Education user-friendly budget as well. But I agree that, and I know that I spend a lot of time myself really digging in to understand the budget, what the categories mean, where the money goes, looking at year over year, understanding why it was different, understanding impacts of having surpluses, what can you do with it, how do you roll it forward, impacts on future years. There's a lot to it. So I don't know that we're in a position to run a seminar on all of that. So I think it's going to be, the onus is, I think, in large part on the district, on Karen, hey Karen, and Matt, to present the budget in a way to the public that is understandable, that conveys the truth about the budget, that unlocks any hidden secrets people might think are there, or at least dismisses those myths. So I think a lot of the onus will be on us to present it well. But unfortunately, I think the best way for someone to learn about this is to really dig in and spend a lot of time learning it. I don't know if that's a good enough answer. And I don't know if any other board members or Matt or Karen want to chime in on that. You're welcome to. Or Amy, if you want to follow up.
No, I think that's a good start. And I certainly don't mean that people are going to get into the the nitty gritty weeds, but there has to be some level of education that people, as I spoke in the beginning about the declining enrollment and taxes, whether they stay stagnant, you don't even want them to stay stagnant, right? You want them to go down, so I think there does have to be, especially on the onset of what's going to occur here. I think the more education and willingness to support the questions, which it seems like you're certainly open to doing, I think it's just helpful.
Hey, John.
Yep.
Hey, I think I just want to try to answer one question. I've only been doing this budget for about a year or two. I'm still learning. It is a lot to get your head around. But one thing that once I learned and realized it helped a lot is that whether there's 10 kids in the class or 20, it costs the same to run that class. Turn on the lights, run the school bus, have the teacher stand in front, all those sort of numbers stay the same. So just because enrollment is down doesn't mean the taxes just go down.
Well, I don't think I was thinking that. Clearly, I understand what overhead is and everything else, but it's neither here nor there. I mean, it's just the thought of what people think, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, Amy, please don't take that reply the wrong way. I'm sure it wasn't meant,
Yeah. No, I don't think you did, but it's the room when you have less students, it's not going to cost as much. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And like I said, we have actually, made 3 budget cuts and held the levy flat in the past 4 budget cycles, and realized too that when we hold the budget, the tax levy flat, our state aid is declining every year.
I understand, and that all comes into play with the education, right?
Yeah.
Those side notes and all the asterisks and everything else. Yeah. No, I think you're doing a great job here. Thank you.
Right. I appreciate your question. Thanks for being here.
Hey, John.
Yep.
Just 2 seconds. Okay, Amy, for everyone else listening to that same question, it's very important. I think the way I was learning also prior to me getting involved with the board is also just doing exactly what you're doing, is showing up and asking questions, because there were so many questions I had that I had no idea what they were until I understood the definition of them. So I think if we get questions answered, I think it helps a lot of us understand the pros and cons of this move. So thank you.
Right.
All right. Amy, anything else?
No, thank you. Thank you again, all.
Yep. Jack is
ready.
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, the logging out and back in definitely fixed it.
Jack, I want to say thank you for joining. It's very nice to see you face to face. I wish we were in person, but thanks for joining.
No, this works. I'm used to it. It's how work has been for the past year or longer. So, I appreciate that you all would love to give the taxpayers back the surplus, and I fully understand why you can't. And there's a lot to be changed in Trenton that I wish we could change, but I think you know where I'm going, though, in terms of, I reached out to you earlier, and I just want to understand why. And before we get into the why of, why wouldn't just the town on its own, moving the election to April have been enough to avoid putting the public through this, creating this rift, creating emotion, right? You're worried about an emotional vote, and it's you can argue who threw the first stone here, but historically for the history of Fredon Township and Fredon School, there's been a much longer period of time when the town did vote on the budget versus when Christie made the changes to allow you not to. So I guess the question is, because I keep hearing, well, what are they hiding? Well, they're not. Never thought you guys were really hiding anything, because the budget is still public. It's available. I mean, people can see it. Just can't vote on it. So, and I don't think any of you are all crooks. I think everybody goes into this with the best intentions. So that makes it even more puzzling as to the why. But before we get into the why and the history of why we got to this point, and maybe start healing the town, I need everybody to understand the consent order that was presented to me by Attorney Simon, representing the school board. And what was presented to me was, and the way I discussed it with the attorney, was exactly what the judge gave us, which is all we ever wanted. This was never about shortening or lengthening elections and board member terms. All the town wanted, the people wanted, was the ability to vote on the budget. And I never wanted to put a hardship on the board about complicating the election cycle and having to shorten it. Even though technically the petition was to move the election to April, we were always willing to bifurcate that. And I even expressed that clearly to Attorney Simon, and we also put it into our legal writing with our complaint that was always an option as well. So that being said, I also discussed with the attorney that what you guys had already put in the initial resolution you sent to the town back in December, which was to skip everything in April 21, skip everything in November 21, and then just do both in 22. We weren't okay with that, obviously, but I wanted that additional 2022 synchronization of the budget with the election as part of the consent order. So it was a no-brainer and it was slam dunk, and Nathaniel even agreed with that, but then it turned out the board would not agree to that. So I'm still like confounded as to why you agreed to 2022 in your resolution to the town directly. And you agreed in the consent order to myself and Henry Rothrock, the plaintiffs, you agreed to bifurcate the budget in April of 21. We were totally okay with that. But why wouldn't you agree to both happening in 2022 as part of the consent order? We would have laid down, we would have been a kumbaya moment, and that would have been the end of it. But we knew, and this is very important, we knew 100% that if the budget got voted down, and maybe even if it didn't get voted down this April, and I did not go into this with the intention of ever voting down a budget. I may never even vote on the school budget. That's my option. And that's my neighbor's option. And it should be everybody's option to have that right to vote. So whether or not I vote up or down or not at all on your budget is irrelevant here. It's the right to vote. So we knew 100% that if that budget were to get voted down this April of 2021, that this board would immediately, first meeting they had, they would have moved the election back to November of 2021 or 2022. They would have just picked or choose either November. We would have lost our right to ever vote again in April. And most likely, because you would have moved it to April or November of 2021, anything the town did to the budget would have been null and void. It would have gone back to the 2% auto pass. And all we fought for, everything we did with this judge would have been thrown out the window and would have been all for naught. And the battle would have continued. It would have gotten uglier and it would never end. So I think I need to hear from you, John, or Mr. Beck, whoever wants to speak. Why wouldn't you not make the consent order to be exactly what the judge ruled, which is all we really wanted and all the people of this town wanted? Okay, maybe for some, it still would have been too late to have a healing moment, but we were all for the consent order. I was happy to see it. I thought this was over with, and you guys could not do that. So I'll listen to that response, but then I would like a little more history as to what are you so afraid of? Why don't you want the taxpayers, the people that are paying the bills? We pay Mr. Beck's salary, we pay all the teachers' salaries, we pay for all the expenses. They're our kids. I mean, let's not lose sight of the fact that they are our children. And these are our property taxes, and this is our town, and these are our property values that we care about. So we want balance. We want bang for a buck. We want quality blue ribbon schools. Everything you guys all claim to want, we want tenfold. But we also want the right to vote on the school budget. Never about the election. I hope that's crystal clear. I don't know if I could say it with any more clarity, but and I may have more to add if I may, but I'd like to hear back from the board now.
Yeah, so absolutely. So I'll proud of that. There's a number of things you touched on, so you may have to prompt me on a few of those. So with regard to the consent order, so there's kind of two aspects to that, right? One I touched on in terms of when we had that lengthy discussion in the executive session, and I don't know how much I'm supposed to say about this, but we gave direction to our attorney to try to negotiate a settlement. The board was concerned about, as I put in the slides, right? The board was concerned about the possibility of an emotional vote, the budget getting voted down, going to the town council, and the budget getting slashed. That was a real concern. So again, put yourself in our shoes as the Board of Ed looking out for the school in that regard. We were concerned about that real possibility. So we were very reluctant to commit to a multi-year consent order if we didn't need to. That's the reality of it. And I know I don't know if you believe this, but we had no intention of flipping right back to November unless we felt we needed to. And things that would have defined needed to for me would be if the worst case happened, the budget got slashed, and we felt that it was damaging to the school and we needed to try to get control back over the budget. That would have been the scenario, but we had no intention of automatically flipping it back. Does that help on that point?
Well, I think there's a limitation to what the town council, the town committee could cut. And you always have the option to go back, I think, to the Department of Education for assistance in that matter. But I think it's this mentality or attitude, if you will, about, well, we have to protect the school. Well, again, let's not forget whose school it is. It's our school. So if we vote the budget down as a community, we did it as a community. And let's not forget who the town committee is. They're also elected officials who also live in the town, who also want the best for our kids and our school and our property values. So we're all in this together.
Right.
So I think a lot of it is this mentality of you're the great protectors of the school and the children and the teachers. And, no, it's you have to look at it holistically. It's not all about you 5 people and protecting anything. It's a public vote now on the budget. And I think over time, and maybe even with the very first budget that you come out, if everybody looks through it and cooler heads prevail, and it's a good, common sense, well thought out budget, and you've already shown numbers are now starting to go back in the right direction. And I think you explained to a lot of people who probably didn't understand capital reserve, and all that's informative and well and good. But I think when you go into this now and you're on an April cycle and you expose a budget to the public, yeah, it's the public's right to vote yes or no. And you can't short circuit that and just say, well, if we don't like the outcome, we're going to just flip it back to November, because that's exactly what you would have done. And that is the frustration and the emotion and what's driving this ridiculous rift that could have been avoided many years ago. And I do want to get into why this started in the first place.
Jack, let me just interject one thing on that. Can that be one of those points that we can agree to disagree on? Because I understand that you feel and others feel that was the board's intent, but I can tell you from the board, that was not our intent. I'd like it if we could just agree to disagree on that point.
I will agree to disagree, but I also, as I told the judge, and the reason he did what he did was because I said you have to look at history. We tried to avoid litigation. We tried to avoid public rift. The town tried to do the right thing and just move it back to April on their own. The mayor reached out to you several times and tried to mitigate this without litigation. And the fact that you guys even fighted the petition. I mean, a petition is nothing more than a petition of everybody in town getting together and saying, look, we want to see a question on the ballot. You guys tried to fight that. Come on. I mean, really, fighting a petition, and then we're supposed to trust you guys. I would love nothing more than to trust you guys. And again, thank you for volunteering your service. I may do the same someday. Thank you, Jeff, for joining recently. Consider Jeff a friend. You may not agree on all matters school board, and we certainly have disagreed up to this point, I think, on a lot of things. But it's not personal. This is not personal with me. It's about a right. And I think you guys still don't get it. I still don't think you get it. I don't. I honestly, nothing I've seen here tonight, again, very well, great presentation, all of it. But I don't see where anybody, all of you that are really against the public voting on a budget, still don't think you understand why. And we can disagree on that as well, but I don't think you get it.
Yeah, just try to remember that we did move it to April of 22. So it's not that we're totally opposed to the public voting. We're concerned about this April for the reasons that I tried to summarize before.
You wouldn't put it in the consent order, though. You would only agree to April 2022 on your terms with nothing happening this year.
Agreed.
Now you would do it in April 2022, but you wouldn't compromise and have a consent order that said budget only April 21, do both 2022. Now you could have in your resolution to the town in December, you could have actually said what the judge did. And you could have said, you know what? It's going to be a hardship for us to terms. We want to bifurcate and do the budget only in 2021, and we'll synchronize the two in 2022. Had you guys done that, bam, it's over and done with. You guys couldn't do that.
I don't remember that bifurcation was really part of our conversations back then.
Well, no, you could have proposed that. We would have accepted it. You on your own terms said, we're going to do both in April 2022. We're going to ignore the will of the people who voted for moving the election, which meant, yes, shortening terms. We wouldn't have pushed that issue. We didn't care about the election. We wanted to vote on the budget. So you guys could have come up on your own. You didn't need us to tell you to do that. But you could have said on your December resolution to the town, you could have said, we're going to hold the budget only vote in April, and we're going to synchronize the two in 2022, which is ultimately what took my time and money and Henry Rothrock's time and money and wasting the judge's time and dragging everybody through the mud. It took that to have the judge say what you guys could have done or what you could have then done in the consent order. So why am I frustrated? Can anybody not see why I'm frustrated? I mean, it's a no-brainer. I mean, everybody else gets it except for you guys. Everybody I talk to gets this except for you guys. So why is that? This is the why. Why? It's always about the why. Nothing makes sense.
Jack, just one more thing on that. So what I touched on before about dealing with emergent issues. So we had an executive session at a special meeting, gave our attorney direction. When that offer was not accepted, we could not reconvene as a board to change what we had told her or to discuss another option. So I hope you can appreciate that our hands were largely tied with what we told her. We couldn't reconvene. We couldn't have changed that direction. So we didn't have a choice. And coupled with the other issues that I touched on before is, again, being concerned about locking in multiple years if we didn't need to, right? So
you're saying that because you only authorized Nathania to bifurcate an April only budget vote, and she was not authorized to just include what you said in the resolution. You couldn't add that one. You couldn't authorize her to add one more sentence to the order, the consent.
Not only couldn't we have done that, but we did not want to commit the district to multiple years for the reasons I talked about before.
Wow.
So,
I'm sorry. I mean,
but
again,
Jack,
we'll agree to disagree on that, but that's
Jack,
not making sense.
Think about it this way, right? We offered to and would have agreed to an April 21 budget vote. We already had a resolution that covered 22. So you and I, the board and you and Henry were aligned on all of those things. Mm-hmm. It would have, I think, what was missing here was another way to think of it is what was missing was perhaps some trust on your part that we would have held to our word. We would have stuck with April 21 vote. We were not planning to flip it back. And I think that part of what's driving that for you is the belief that we had planned to flip it back immediately.
You've kind of admitted that you would do that if you didn't like the outcome. So you confirm what I already knew.
Yeah, Jack, not if we didn't like the outcome, but if the outcome was devastating to the school. There's a difference.
Yep.
There's a difference.
I guess one more thing, getting back to my discussion with Nathania that Friday or Thursday, whenever it was, leading into the weekend. I actually, again, over the weekend when I agreed to the order, provided I had that additional sentence in there. So she's a professional. She is smart. She was hired for this job because she's a shark and really tested this than many people in the state. She's a top school board attorney. So why did she just say, Mr. Harris, you don't need that. The resolution from December covers you for 2020. The smartest woman in school board, legal terms. Why wasn't she able to instruct me to say, I assure you, Mr. Harris, that you are covered by the December resolution that was given to the town council. And if she had explained that to me that we're covered, I would have said, okay, fine. But that was not explained to me by the attorney. You didn't need another school board meeting for her to tell me that. So
I would agree. And I don't know why that wasn't conveyed.
Yeah. So, But again, just it's not adding up for me. Why? The why? I mean, I can go back since the petition and why you fought the petition and the why. And I can go back years and years of the town trying to flip it to April and you guys flipping it right back. The why. So I'm not saying who cast the first stone here, but I don't think it was the town.
Yeah, I mean, Jack, there's a lot of history that I'd rather not go into here with, issues between mayors and board presidents, and it really isn't appropriate for us to go back that far, and it's not constructive.
So why don't we just start with the why from the denying the petition, just putting a question on a ballot to February 12th when, and again, I guess I should add one other thing, and I'm not trying to be a smart ass. Sorry, strike that from the record, please. But sorry, I lost my train of thought.
You're asking about the petition. Why with the petition?
Yeah. Well, why didn't you want the people? No, what I was going to say is, great that we're doing all this, but I wonder, would you still be having this conversation if you, the Board of Education, won in court, as opposed to plaintiffs? Like, are we all now kind of having this conciliatory tone? Let's try and solve this and let's work together now. But what if we, the plaintiffs, lost this case? Would we even having this conversation? I don't know.
Yeah, but that's a hypothetical. I don't want to go too far down that path, but I can tell you that that if you had lost, then the election and vote would have been in April 22. Okay. The resolution would have stood. Mm-hmm. Right. But I am all about, this board is all about trying to strike harmony. I'm living in this town for 28 years, right? I love it here. I really love this town. And I can tell you, I've been through a lot as a board member here, a lot of strife and turmoil a number of years back when all this budget stuff first kicked up. And it was awful. And it really was turning me off on the town and everything. And I really tried to suppress that because I don't want to be soured on this town. I believe in it. I love it. I think we need to market it better and get more families here. I really believe that. So I think I would like to see us try to reach common ground. I'd like to give other people a chance to speak. I sent you my cell number. If you want to call me at another time, we can talk in more detail as much as I'm legally able to. I'm happy to do that. But unless you have other questions now.
No, I'm done. And I appreciate the time. And I'm really just a one-trick pony here. It's lucky coming back to the why. This was so unnecessary, and regret kind of jumping on the sword and trying to stick up for what I think is democracy. So, I don't regret any of this or getting involved. And and again, perhaps someday in a not so distant future, I'll get more involved and even run for school board someday. And but again,
can I just ask one thing real quick? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you look back at the budgets for the past couple of years, are there any major gripes with the issues or the budgets that we put out?
I don't agree with the cost per pupil, and I think things could have been done differently.
Okay.
I guess I could take credit for calling it the Fredon Academy. But if the cost per pupil is sort of in that range of a private school. So I say that tongue in cheek, but it's really not too far off base. But again, I'm a one-trick pony. It was really more about the right to vote.
All right. Well,
it's
just throwing this out. We have had 0% budgets, and it's been a focus for the past couple of years. Since the last time we had a large meeting similar to this, where there was a letter read and a lot of the points came up. That stuff stuck with us for a long time, and we did try to address a number of these concerns financially. And it's been a point of focus for the last couple of years. We talk about this stuff just about every meeting, and I haven't seen a whole lot of participation on a regular basis. But that has been our focus, is to try to address some of those budgetary concerns and to put us back in better standing in that sense. So, again, how this discourse happened, things like that. there's a lot of different, you might be questioning, well, why would you? I mean, we have to do what we need to do from a legal position just to, maintain our autonomy. But it does not mean we don't care about trying to address your concerns financially. I mean, we talk about that stuff very regularly. So just because, we take a position, you can, like question why somebody would do that. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why a school board would want to maintain their autonomy, and not have, certain things imposed on them. But at the same time, like, we have taken a lot of steps and made a lot of progress to address those things, financially trying to share services, trying to reach out to other sending districts, Kittatinny sending districts, and try to share positions, while at the same time maintaining programming. So, it's kind of frustrating to, hear that there's still skepticism about our intent when we talk about it most meetings, and regularly absolutely at every one of the meetings that addresses budget. Last year's budget committee or budget presentation, there was really nobody there. So I really do hope that we do have, healthier discourse and, get regular attendance at board meetings, and at those meetings specifically where people come out and really scrutinize and look at the budget, because it is talked about, and, we need to be in the same room. We need to be having conversations face to face. And if we're going to make this better, and that takes all of us.
I'm pretty confident that's going to start happening, and I appreciate, again, thank you for volunteering, and thank you for sharing that. I definitely think, if you could say we hit rock bottom as a public relations sort of thing here between the community and the school board, and maybe it took litigation to kind of bring things to a head. But I do think you'll see a lot more participation now. And but again, I just don't want to ever see that right taken away from the town people, the taxpayers, to have that check and balance in place. And again, there's nothing to be afraid of. Okay, so if a budget goes down this year or next year, you'll get on a track. You'll get on a good run where you'll just start. It'll start auto passing, just like your 2% auto passing.
Well, once again,
when this ship turns around, when the right ship gets righted and things are on the right track, it will absolutely pass every April. I'm confident of that.
Mr. Harris, I'm putting it out there. I have voted 2 times to move the election to April. I also went to a town council meeting 3 years ago and proposed putting the ballot question out. So again, if there's a procedural issue with, something that takes place or something, I mean, I'm pretty by the book and relatively policy based. I try to follow that law as close as possible. And that's not, that's just the reality of it. I am in favor of people voting, personally. I think we all are. So again, it's, just because, it could be perceived one way or another, I think it is because we aren't talking all the time. I think we need to do a better job of just communicating with each other. So, again, coming here and speaking with us and having a conversation is healthy, and I would absolutely advocate that we keep it going. Right. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I'm done. I got to be done talking. I'd like to see somebody else chime in, because I've definitely monopolized the conversation enough here.
Thanks, Jack. And reach out if you have other things you want to talk about. So, Matt, anybody else have a question?
I don't see any hands raised. Nikki Brand just raised her hand.
Okay. Nikki, there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
All right, I can't see me. Maybe, hopefully you guys can. My camera's on.
Yep, we can see you.
I wrote a letter here because I have been frustrated as well with a lot of the social media stuff. And as a parent, I wanted just to come on and speak on behalf of a lot of parents. So I just want to introduce myself. I can see that there's 50 plus people on here. So hi, everyone. My name is Nikki Brand. I've been living in Fredon for almost 10 years. My husband is a lifelong resident and actually went to Fredon as a kid. I moved here not because the taxes were low, because they weren't. I moved here specifically for the school. I wanted the best for my kids. I'm the co-president of the PTC. I'm a 7-year coach for KMFL. I'm an advocate for our local fire department, and I respect our town committee and our Board of Ed members. I also hosted the local news for Sussex County for like 20 years, so I'm familiar with where we live. I wanted to write this for several reasons. First, I want to say that as a very active member of my community, I'm so saddened to see the constant negativity on our local Facebook page. As a mom, my heart aches with every post bashing our school and our superintendent and our teachers. I have watched our school go through 5 superintendents, one who died of cancer, and now, after finding Matt Beck, who has kids in the school and who also is a father and a coach, it's a very sad reflection on our beautiful town. We're also in the middle of a storm known as a global pandemic. Matt and our staff have worked tirelessly to get our kids safely back to school where they belong 5 days a week. Our kids have been so deeply affected by this past year, and the school and their teachers are their only normalcy. This has been completely turned upside down by the way of the world. And let me add that the staff and our students lost one of the best teachers we've ever known over Christmas break. Our Spanish teacher died, and our kids never got to say goodbye. So when I go online and I see the constant bashing, calling our school Fredon Academy, I can assure you I am not alone in saying we want it to stop. I will not contribute to any hate online, and honestly, there are hundreds like me. I'm asking everyone who is listening to please see me as a mother, as a fellow taxpayer, someone who is trying to help my 5, 11, and 13-year-old navigate life through a pandemic. The negative rhetoric has got to end, and we are trying to teach our children. What are we trying to teach our children when our grown town residents keep the same hatred going? I completely understand that there is frustration. I too have been frustrated in the past and have attended my fair share of board meetings. I too actually expressed my frustration years ago with a different board. Everyone has a right to express their opinions and concerns, but to spew the hate and call for recalls and assume everyone feels the same is wrong. It's malicious. And as a mom, I'm just begging you all to stop. All sides, the school and the town. Please, let's put our concerns here at the meetings, at our board meeting and at our town meetings. And let's leave it offline. I'm also putting it out there publicly that if you want a parent in the school's opinion and influence, and you want to form an interim committee with the town and the school, I'm your girl. I'll be happy to meet with anyone on either side to try to keep the peace. My biggest concern is our kids. Imagine them. Imagine being them, living this life with everything they know to be different. No more hugging, socializing, masks, 6 feet apart, partitions, sports being canceled, no more fun class trips, turkey trots, plays, assemblies, dances, any type of group activities, all gone. And I'm sure there are people saying, well, suck it up, be grateful you're not sick. I am grateful, but I am sad and I am worried, and this is my biggest concern as a parent, and I certainly wish the biggest concern of our community. These kids are sad, they're lonely, and we need to focus as a community on them, getting back to normalcy where they can hug their friends and their teachers and eat lunch in their classes and in their cafeteria. Hopefully one day we won't even have to wear a mask. It's a nightmare right now. And I think oftentimes others around us lose focus on the fact that this is an actual school with actual kids and feelings and parents and teachers who are all hurting inside watching all of our kids go through this. I love our beautiful town of Fredon. I respect our Board of Ed members, and I do truly respect our town committee people as well. I hope to see peace soon. It truly is such a bad look for Fredon to have adults acting like my preschooler. This goes for both ends of the spectrum, and I truly mean that. It goes for both sides. Let's do better and be better. Let's focus on our kids. And remember, most of our town residents' kids also went through this school. That's my letter.
Thank you, Nikki. Really appreciate you taking the time to write that and read it to us. I think it was a really great message, and I know I'll take it to heart. Thank you.
Thank you. And honestly, even after listening to Jack speak, I know that there's true frustration from all sides. I can appreciate it. I was frustrated with a lot in the past myself. And I just need everybody to know that I think if we can come to peace with each other and we can focus on the kids of the school and how they're dealing in this pandemic and how we as taxpayers and parents can try to come together and be examples for our children, I think it's the best way to go. So that's where I'm at.
Thanks, Nikki. And I agree. I mean, I've been on the board since 2014, and there's been a lot of distractions from what I would consider the main focus, which is the kids and the school and the teachers and staff. So thank you for that. We will certainly take it to heart.
Thanks.
Okay. Matt, does anybody else want to speak up?
I'm going to lower Nikki's hand for her. And I don't see any hands.
Give it another second. If someone else doesn't want to ask a question, then we'll close public comment. We'll give it one more minute. While we're waiting, I'll say I really am glad that there were so many people on the call today to listen in. Looks like another hand went up.
Yeah, Michelle Mangino.
Hello, it's actually not Michelle, it's Bob Mangino calling, 2 Oak Tree Road, Fredon, New Jersey. That's a tough act to follow from Nikki, but I think it's essentially two completely separate items we're talking about. I don't think really, one has to do with the budget, which is ultimately what we're here to discuss. I certainly agree on social media, and, there's things being pushed both ways, and I'm sure we could all do better in that regard. The one thing I think I'm very excited and happy to see is Miss Constantino sitting there as our BA. I thought it was a nice kind of speech John gave, but essentially most of those things he said were all things that have happened under the watch of several of these board members, Mr. Niemasz, Mr. Higgins, Mr. Kappler. I mean, John, you just mentioned you've been there since 2014. So as you went back through your slides for all these mishaps and things that got out of hand, got out of reach, nobody knew, nobody saw, nobody could tell, nobody knew what was happening. Well, so you, sir, were there in charge on the finance committee. I know on several of those years, because many of us were there fighting in those battles and trying to get some type of communication from the board. Again, I'm certainly willing to move forward, but I think it's a little disingenuous to basically ask everyone else to, let's all move forward when this board has been the one fighting the town for transparency and honesty and essentially the right to vote on the budget that they pay for. I mean, to me, it's beyond reproach that we're here acting as if we're out of line to ask for that. So, that's really my part is we go through and talk about 4 different superintendents and 7 different BAs. Well, who's in charge of making those decisions through the board? Are you telling me 6, 7 BAs quit every year, year after year, and every superintendent quit year after year, year after year? And I see as some of you are shaking your head, well, you guys hired these folks. So there's responsibility in those decisions and those decisions being made. So to act as if all these things in the budget got offline was just an accident, to me as a business owner, as someone that takes care of money and employs people and hires people and runs a business. If I ran my business like this, I'd be out of business. And I think it's very frustrating when we've simply asked over the years, as Mr. Harrison mentioned, this could have all went away so long ago by just allowing the people the right to vote on the budget that they pay for. I could never for the life of me understand what was being protected. Okay, and again, I've been through this thing. I was probably one of the biggest financial and emotional supporters of this school. And I think it's very insulting to this town's intelligence to say you five folks as a Board of Ed were concerned about an emotional vote. I mean, you don't get to decide my emotions and what I'm emotional about or what this town is emotional about. And to make a fiscal decision because you're worried about the emotions of people, to me, as a business person and a financial, emotions don't come into business. And you're making financial decisions about this town, about the kids, and about how this school is run. So to me, to just say, I guess us town folk are too emotional to make a rational decision is very insulting, okay? Number two, okay, and as we have fought this battle for years, I think many of us on here, and it's insulting whoever posted that the mayor wants to close this school, because that is absolutely not the case. This mayor has done more and fought for this town and been on the board for 20 years. So I find that a little insulting. But really what's happening here, okay, the budget has to get in line. In 2017, the budget was $7.2 million. When 6 years prior, when my son was in that school, that budget was $4.4 million. So there's really no justification or explanation that makes any sense other than poor decision making. So my concern and me moving forward, listen, I'm all in. I'll give you guys a chance, but I certainly am concerned about some of the, what I think my level of confidence is. I'm very happy we have Arnie and Jeff. They're brand new. I know Ben, Kathy, and John have been there for a long, long time. And to me, I really don't have confidence that they're going to make meaningful change. I'm hoping maybe they will with Jeff and Arnie kind of getting up to speed. And Ben, I like to see that, you're kind of working towards trimming down the budget and whatnot. But it's just a little concerning to sit here and act as if we've made some slight adjustments, things are going well, and we're down to a $6 million budget. Still too high, ridiculously too high. And, I don't need you guys to collect my tax money and keep it in your school budget to turn around and return it back to me as a tax levy savings. I'd rather we decide what gets done with our tax money. And really, that's really my point moving forward. There's no reason we can't have a great school. I've been saying it at years for this board meeting. I'd have no problem with the $26,000 student. We should have the best STEM program in the world. We should have the best computer systems in the world. We should have the best music program in the world. We should have the best language program in the world. Instead, we have shared programs. We barely even offer those things. If we were enriching our students and spending this money, that's fantastic. That's a reason for someone to move to Fredon. For us to act as if we have a wonderful school right now, guys, other than the fact that it's nice and everyone likes each other and it's a wonderful setting and whatnot, we're not performing as a wonderful school. So that should really matter to somebody. And if your real concern is the town and the values and growing this town and growing our school and it thriving, that needs to be the goal, increasing the education level at a reasonable dollar amount. And I'm so excited to see that Karen's there because I feel confident that she can get that done with some guidance with Jeff and Arnie and some of the others maybe changing their tune. Because for the other three of you, and Ben, I just heard you say that's great. But the other two, as I've watched this meeting and watched Catherine Higgins's kind of smug faces, it's kind of upset me a little bit. And really, you've been there for all of these decisions, Kathy, and John, you've been there for all of these decisions. So kind of we're in this part, we're at this position, under your leadership. So we'll we're on board. We've turned a corner. I hope and pray that you guys all move forward and we get this on a great track. But if we're going to spend this money, let's spend it in the right place and on the right things other than what we're doing now. Thank you.
So Bob, appreciate your comments. Just a couple of things, right? So yes, I joined the board late 2014. Actually, John Flora was the one that got me on the board back then, and he rolled off shortly after that. And if you remember, Bob, and this is meant to try to take credit, but I was the one that uncovered the large surplus in December of 2016. The fiscal year closed in June of 2016. The auditor presented the finances in December of 2016, and he was flipping through slides at a meeting, and I had him go back and say, well, wait a minute. And I asked him some questions about a slide and uncovered that there was a large surplus that had gotten shuffled off to cap reserve. So I spent a lot of time then digging in and understanding the budget and trying to help drive towards right-sizing the budget. And it wasn't easy. The churn in VAs and superintendents, reluctance to make cuts. I remember suggesting we could make a 10% cut in the tax levy. And one of our BAs said, well, I would quit my job before I did that. It would never happen. Well, guess what? We were pretty close to that at this point with the cuts we've made recently, the 3 cuts and the flat levy. So it's actually, I don't know the right word. I feel it's unfortunate to me that you have those feelings towards me. I think they're somewhat misplaced, but I'd love a chance to talk to you more about it because I think there's more to the story, and I think we could find common ground on that. So I think we want the same things. I can tell you also with regard to all these comments about fighting the ballot question and the resolution flipping back and forth. I don't want to go too far down that path, but I can tell you, if you just think back on the types of posts that we've seen on social media, some of the conversations that we've had separately with members of the community in a position to affect things, that there was a real concern that they would drive the vote to an emotional vote and get control of the budget. And the board went back and forth on this topic. It was very split on this topic, but ultimately we decided to take the action that you are aware of. So I don't know. I'm not sure what else to add on that. I don't know, Bob, if there's something else you'd want me to touch on. Kathy, it looks like you want to chime in. Just keep it friendly, Kathy.
I would like to. First of all, I don't have a smug.
It's hard to hear you, actually.
Oh, sorry. I don't have a smug face. I'm not. I'm here to listen, and I'm sorry if you see it differently. I joined the board in 2017, and that was the middle of 2017. And before that, I worked in the school, and my children went to the school, and I have a deep connection to the
Kathy, sorry, it is really hard to hear you. I'm sorry. Is there a way to get closer to the mic or something? You're coming through, but it's faint.
But I'm trying. Can you hear me now?
It actually sounds a lot better. Yeah.
Okay. So, as I was saying, I joined the board in 2017, in the middle of 2017. And before that, I worked for the school. And my children went to the school. And, Bob, I remember helping your children in the school when I worked in the technology department. So I have a deep connection to this school. And the idea that you think I was smug about it, I mean, it's very frustrating for me to have joined the board. And what I wanted to do was help right-size the budget. In 2017, when I joined, help right-size the budget. And that's what we are working on every single year. And I'm disappointed that you don't see it. I'm also disappointed that people are very willing to attack on social media when, in fact, they would never say it to my face. I mean, Bob, you're the only one actually that has. So it's really, it's upsetting that nobody comes to the board meetings, but we're all able to just to judge. When, we sit here, we do hours of work, and we're not asking for anything. We don't get paid. It's just simply, I want to make sure our school is a great school. That's all. And I do want to make sure our budget is a reasonable budget and that our children are put first. That's what I want. So what happens on Inside Fredon is very frustrating. And I've seen all the messages about myself and other members of the board. And it's distressing, it's upsetting, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to do my job here. Okay, so I'm sorry you feel that my face is smug, but that's just the way my face is, I'm afraid. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Certainly, listen, guys, I certainly understand, okay? And here's the point in the backstory, because there's a lot of people on that are new that haven't been on the scene for some of these, but very many of us for many years went to board meetings, okay? And were completely shut down and not allowed the right to speak. I was at several meetings where a bell was rung in my ear and I was told to stop speaking, okay? Nikki was at several of those meetings. Several people have been at those meetings, okay? So to sit and say the social media became the last place for the disgruntled voice to be heard, because we tried to be heard at your meetings and we were 100% shut down. So anyone that was there for these moments can certainly remember those times, okay? And that's where the frustration leads. So listen, to me, it's very convenient to say, hey, let's all forget and move forward. And I'm a big enough man and I'm a smart enough man to be able to do that. But when this board has made no attempt to facilitate the very things they're now advocating for, you can allow me to be a little bit skeptical of that. That's all.
Excuse me, real quick.
Move forward.
Mr. Mangino, I mean, I've been on the board this is now my 4th year. I don't think I sat in on a meeting where there was a bell. So you're talking about there being a bell at a meeting and people being cut off.
Then maybe it was before you, sorry.
Yeah, it was. Also, our budget is nowhere near $6 million. So we're not even really talking about the same thing. And again, the reality is, I mean, no one has been at meetings for the past year. When we were talking about moving the election to 2020, no one was around in November.
Thought that it was done and over with. And
excuse me?
I said we stopped coming to the meetings because we thought we had won. Now, next thing you know, you guys continued to fight. I mean, this has happened 3 or 4 times. You guys, we have won the right to vote, and you have changed it on your own, usurping the will of the people.
You can't usurp the will of the people if people don't come to the meeting to discuss it. So when it's on the agenda in November and no one comes and it's silence during the meeting, and that was when I was board president. So I do recall that. So November and December, there was no comment, no public comment whatsoever about it.
Well, Ben, I think what's happened is number one, obviously my children have moved on in school age, so I'm not as active as I was when my children were there. I'm still involved as I start to hear things. And as I go back and I look forward into this presentation that was given to me, where you showed us these cap reserve hips, okay? There's been a tune of about $5 million by your own numbers that you've been running. Prior to 2020, it's about 3 million. Right now, you're saying you got 1.45, okay? That's about $5 million of surplus that our budget is kicking every single year. So to sit here and tell us whatever you're doing to save it, we need to make line item cuts to the budget. It's just that simple.
I apologize. No, but I'm going to have to stop you there. That's just not accurate. I mean, we go through the budget in detail every single year, and that's not accurate. We're down to, we do not have duplicate sections. There's no, every single class has been consolidated. My kid was in the first class where we originally had 2 separate teachers. There's now 1 teacher in 2nd grade. I mean, at this point, if there are considerable cuts. It's going to be the things that do make Fredon special. And that's the reality of it. So I would like for people to continue to participate, but it doesn't mean like we come in and just put forward information that's not accurate. We need to rely on accurate information. So
okay, well, can we start with this then?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'd like to finish this.
Yeah.
The one thing that we need to do, we need to look at the budget. So when the budget presentation comes out, it needs to be scrutinized, but let's do that with accurate information in place. Let's not just, assume anything.
That's fair. And I feel confident in information now that Mrs. Constantino's there. I think that's fantastic. My concern is just very simple economics, very simple math, okay? It really doesn't need to be much more complicated than this. And I would love for our board to give me a simple explanation, okay? About 8 to 10 years ago, our budget was $4.4 million on average with about 300 and something children in the school. We're now at, what is the number that's fair? Because the number you showed was $6 million, okay? If you want to put in your capital expenditures, I don't need you to tell me how that's the budget, the operating budget plus the operating, it's all part of what you're collecting. So it's still the same money. So let's not pretend it's like two separate entities. If anything, the capital expenditures are money you're spending from money that you guys have put in the cap reserve over the last few years, okay? So how are we now at a point where the school has half the students as when my youngest was a kindergartner, and the budget is about $1.8 million higher? Do we have the same amount of teachers? Do we have less teachers? I'd have to think we have more.
So Bob, we're going to have to go through that in detail with you because it's not a one-line answer, right? As you know, healthcare costs go up, salaries go up, maintenance go up, utilities goes up. Like a lot of expenses go up, even though the number of kids go down, meaning from inflation is what I'm referring to, right? So I am not in a position at all where I can give you an answer off the cuff to that question, but I could certainly look into it. Karen could look into it more if you wanted to go back and compare, from what year you want to compare, 10 years ago or something to now. I'm not sure that's really time well spent, but it could be done, right?
I have no desire to go backwards. Okay, the past is the past. We need to move forward. The whole point is in moving forward, we need to be on the same page, and we need to feel confident. And I will say from this meeting, I have much more confidence. We need to feel confident that the board is representing the best interests of the townsfolk and the kids. It's a twofold issue. It's not just the kids in the school, because if you look at it that way, it's only 200 families in town are dictating 33% of the budget. Okay, if you want to break it down that simply. Okay, so that's really not where we're at. Everybody, I can guarantee you that signed that petition, everyone that fought to change this thing wants the best for Fredon School. I can guarantee you, I was one of those people that moved here for Fredon School. I've experienced the good and the bad of Fredon School. I've had it on both ends. I had a student that super excelled and a student that struggled. So I've seen both sides of the equation. Really, it's moving forward. And Ben, I think it's great to see that there's acknowledgement, and I, to be honest, was unaware that we've been tracking downward. So that's a good sign. And moving forward, let's keep it moving that way. I just want to get to the point where this board at least acknowledges that it did not communicate well with the public in the past. It did not take the public's interest and thoughts and what they wanted to share as important, and kind of was completely operating autonomous to what most of the people did. And again, we experienced it and we're there.
Bob, I'd like to talk to that just for a second. Just one subtlety, right, is that I fully acknowledge that past boards treated people that way, but this board does not do that. Look at the conversation we're having tonight. We're in the past.
It's fantastic.
In the past, you're absolutely right. I remember the BA was timing people. When the timer went off, people had to stop. I remember all of that garbage. It was horrible. And that was part of the torment and the turmoil that I referenced that I went through. My stomach was literally in a knot for a year during that whole cycle. It was awful. I hated every minute of it, but I hung in there through it, right? And I like to feel like with Ben as president last year, and he willingly conveyed conveyed that role to me this year. It wasn't like there was a battle. It wasn't a fight. It was a nice transition. He served the president 1 year. I'm serving now. Maybe we'll do something like that again next year. I don't know. But this board is much more amicable. The conversation we're having now, I hope, conveys that we want to be open. I apologize first to everybody for the length of this meeting. I know poor Matt and Karen, they sat through a 3-hour meeting a couple weeks ago at the executive session. We're doing it again to you tonight. My apologies. Hopefully this won't happen that much going forward, but we really want to be open, transparent. We are striving for harmony. I'd ask you, Bob, I know that you're skeptical about a lot of those things, but I'd say just give us a chance. Look, judge for yourself, come to meetings, send us your questions. We're doing our best.
And
Listen,
to be
this
fair,
was like, get it all out. Okay. It's out. It's gone. It's over. Let's move forward. I think I'm hoping some people that have been along for the ride feel a little better. And I think this is a great start. And I think it's fantastic. If we keep moving forward like this, I think it's excellent. And moving forward, I think it can only be better.
just to be fair, just so everybody kind of understands, and I think it's tough to have any kind of perspective of this when you don't maybe, I don't know, go to other board meetings and things like that. But I have been to a number of other board meetings outside of the school. It is uncommon to do a free, an open discussion. The norm really is to have a time limit on conversation or public comment. Like, so, and it is not necessarily like a two-way street. So just to put that out there. Also, there really shouldn't be any personal attacks, so if anybody is attacking someone personally on the Board of Ed, that is inappropriate. So we are here to conduct business, and I'm just going to make the point that it's 9:20 and we still have yet to complete or conduct any business whatsoever. So in all fairness, and I know that people tend to, hear something like that and, they're trying to shut us down and they don't want to hear what we have to say. No, I spend more time talking to people in the community about, at least like the people who will talk to me about what's going on at the school and what's going on and things like that. And I'll tell you the truth. Most people that I talk to they lose interest in this topic of the election. I'm consumed by it. I care to hear what people think and to hear what's going on with that stuff. And I want to talk about it because I'm trying to formulate opinions, but most people don't seem interested. And I apologize if that's not necessarily the case on certain chat room groups and stuff but I don't tend to go on there, but it's tough catching an ear and finding people who are interested in necessarily the election. And that seems to be the case when the budgets have been 0% for the past couple of years. As an educator, I find that troubling. I voted for budgets that I necessarily wouldn't have wanted to because members of this community have come and expressed interest in trying to attack the issues that you're all here, basically, advocating for. But I think that it puts us at a loss at some point. Zeros do catch up with you. I realize the declining enrollment is a trend and things like that. Understood, 100%. But at some point, it will catch up with us. So just the idea or the notion that we're just going to be able to go zero or negatives and everything's going to be good in the world, at some point, it's going to catch up with our programming. So again, for us to try to share, that's us trying to maintain our programs and trying to maintain the status and trying to keep all the extra things that are good that people like about our school. It's the reason I moved here. I came to Fredon for the school. We were up in Frankfurt for a long time. We were, growing outside of the house. Well, where's the best elementary school? Where are the best elementary schools around? And this school has a great staff, has an unbelievable group of teachers. They're amazing. They care about the kids. They're invested, and they're doing an awesome job. And they're getting the kids through a really tough time. And we're just trying to maintain those extras. And that is my line in the sand. So if there's ever any question about, where I am, obviously I want to address taxpayer concerns and try to keep things tight. But at the same time, I don't want to give up the things that make the school great. And I don't think that differs too much from where most of you are. I've heard that from you. I mean, we don't have to go around in circles about this kind of stuff. I mean, Bob, if we talk for an hour, that would where we get to. Well, we all care about the school. We want to keep, the budget the right size, but we want to keep the things that are great about it. We're all on the same board. We're on the same page. I mean, this is the biggest nothing burger of a topic that we're talking about here. In the end, because we've had 0% budgets for the past couple of years. I mean, like, we're not going for, we're not padding the budget just to try to take money out of people's pockets. It has nothing to do with anything. So again, like, we are here for you. And I think, like, this conversation needs to move forward into other meetings, and it needs to go into the budget work session, and it needs to go into the budget prep sessions. And I do hope people come and get informed. So where, like Ms. Sweezy was asking, how do I inform myself? Those sessions are very important. Those are vital sessions to attend. Come to those meetings, come to the sessions where, Mr. Beck presents the budget, Ms. Constantino present the budget. Find out what's in there. You want to go line by line through things? We are going to go line by line through things in that budget work session. We're going to have that information presented to you. There's going to be room for scrutiny. We should.
And I would add too that if folks have questions, email Karen, Matt, myself, any of us, and we will try to answer in terms of budget items.
I guess my point being, like, we just need to move some of these things, like, into other meetings moving forward. So again, like. Yeah. That's that. I'm sorry for going on.
That's fine, and it is. We have been in this conversation for a long time. I again apologize to the length, but appreciate everybody hanging in there. Are there other things that people want to bring up that maybe weren't touched on already, or do you think we can close public comment at this time?
No, Mike Lanshoff has his hand up. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, sir.
Lanshoff, it's all good. So my name is Mike Lanch. Camera's not on. Hang on. Coming on. Are we? Yes, we should be good. So
Okay,
Mike Lanshoff, 8 Larkspur Lane. Hi, Mr. Kappler. How are you?
Hello, Mr. Lanshaw. How are you?
Very good. So many of you probably don't know me. I am actually one of the newer residents to Fredon, conveniently very close to Miss Constantino. So one of the things that I just want to talk about and just mention is a lot of comments on Inside Fredon and even on this Google Meet right now is things that have happened in the past, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I could be wrong, but I'm relatively new. Arnie, you mentioned you were working on the budget last year. Jeff, you're brand new. Mr. Kappler, you were the president last year, and you made a comment that you were here 4 years ago, which brings us into somewhere around 2016. Ms. Higgins was 2017. Guess what, people? That's not 10 years ago. Like, we moved here because Fredon is a great school. Maybe it's not the blue ribbon school it once was, but guess what? Look at Sussex County as a whole. Fredon is still a top-notch school. That's why we moved here. We've got a son who will be coming into the district pretty soon. Not quite yet, but soon. So is the budget a concern? Absolutely. But ultimately, it's still a good district, and we want the best for the district. So the only thing I'm going to say is, sorry, I'm directing it at the veterans. Please give the Board of Ed a shot. I'm not saying that I'm skeptical. I've read everything. I've seen everything. But give them a shot. Listen. And again, I will comment as an educator as well. Board meetings are almost always for public comment timed. Almost always. That's just what it is. So again, people are making comments. This is education. This is how it works. So we have to be here as a community for the budget vote. We have to listen to the board meetings and the agendas and go line by line in all of them. It's part of the nature of the game. So I'm hoping that this does clear up some light for the older folk and even for some of the newer folk, that we're here to support the board, help the board, and do what's best for the kids and do what's best for the school. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate the comments.
And just for reference, Mike was a track athlete while I was coaching, and he's one of the best pole vaulters in the county. So that's where I know him from. Anyway.
Right.
All good. Thank you. Have a good night.
Any other hands up?
Hey, John, real quick. First of all, thank you. That was refreshing to hear that comment. Thank you. It's exactly what he just said, though. What we're trying to avoid and stop and calm down is even happening in our chat. and it's still continuing. So like we have to understand everyone has a different emotion and a different opinion. And obviously this session is to try and open this up and get it out there. But at the same time, everyone's going to have a different opinion. To keep the arguments going is sometimes never going to keep this moving forward. So just watching it happen in the chat is still what's happening out there, and it's not stopping. So we got to really be conscious of working on this, please, which is why I'm trying to get involved as well. But just watching it happen, it's got to stop.
I appreciate that. And I think the only thing I'd add to that is that, you know, it's my intention as president, and I believe it's the intention of this board to move forward. I'm really glad we had this session. I'm glad we had these conversations, but we have to keep our focus on the school and not lose sight of the tax issues and the budget issues in the town and all that other stuff. So we're going to do our best to keep our focus on the education and the kids.
Hey, John, Mrs. Ryba Brown just posted something. It was like a link to greatschools.org, and they have us on there at a 7 out of 10. That I gotta just point out, that was one of my belly aches for a long time, was they had us at a 4. And, trying to figure out how we could get that number up. So coming in, I think I pointed that out to Mr. Beck at one point or another in a curriculum policy meeting. How do we get it up? Who do we have to call on the back end? And there's not many places you can go to. So the only place you can really do it is through test scores and ratings and things like that. So that was, last I saw it was a 6 out of 10. Now it's a 7 out of 10. So that's moving in the right direction. So thank you for pointing that out. That's a tough one to pull up. And that's the first thing you see on Zillow too. So if you go on Zillow and you're looking through all the data, about homes and history and things like that, that's what you see. So anyway, just throwing that out.
Okay. Matt, other hands?
No.
All right. I'm going to close public comment. Again, if we didn't get you, if you have something, email it in. We will try to address it. So we're closing public comment. Matt, Chief School Administrator's report.
Yeah, let me find that. My computer I was reading off of went to sleep. That's how long it's been, but I have it open on here too. Hold on one second. Just regular updates here from an administrator's perspective. Just an update on pre-K to 6 in-person instructional update. I know when we started, the last time we met as a board, we were working on bringing all the students back. We have since achieved that, and as John pointed out before, weather permitting, we have achieved that. It's been a rough go the past week to 10 days, but weather aside, all of our students are back in school. The ones that want to be in school, others have opted for remote. Running the statistics, and the students and the families still have the option to opt into remote, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that given the circumstances. Out of our total enrollment, we have about 24 students that have opted for fully remote. So we have 87% of our overall enrollment in school in person, pre-K to 6, and I would say. And we're in every day, all day. So I would venture to say if we're not the only school in the county that is doing that, there might be one other school in the county that is doing that. So Fredon is way ahead of the curve as far as that goes. The master calendar is on this board agenda for next year. And no surprises there, nothing crazy going on there. It matches up to this year. It marries up to this year, corresponding dates. Preschool and kindergarten registration update. Our preschool, as always, one of our stronger programs in the school. The preschool program is already full and with a wait list for next year. So that speaks volumes to our preschool program, to our preschool teacher, specifically, Mrs. Klein. And our kindergarten registration update, it's been a couple of days since I checked in with Mrs. Grasso on that. She has been keeping track. But next year, there's just 16 students so far registered for kindergarten. But she takes care of the registration, and she said that's normal for this time of year, and it usually ticks up as we head into the spring and people moving in to Fredon Township and over the summer. It should tick up, and it usually gets into 2 sections for that. But if we don't hit a certain number, we won't run 2 sections of kindergarten, and we'll run 1 section of kindergarten. Right now, you're looking at the tentative last day of school. We have used 3 actual snow days. for the big snowstorms. And we have been fortunate enough for storms like today and storms like on Friday, we're talking about 1 to 3 inches where it's questionable whether you should come in or not. We've been fortunate enough, as everybody has, to be able to pivot to remote instruction and to have those days count. So otherwise, these snow days that we have currently, the actual snow days that we used, we probably would have about 5 more of those if my calculation off the top of my head serves me correct. So it's been very nice to be able to pivot to remote, and hopefully, if some good things come out of the pandemic, hopefully that's something that the Department of Education will keep for future years, that option for the weather days. There's our enrollment chart. It's been steady all year. And just to point out, when we're talking about enrollment, for those that are newer to the calls, once the pandemic hit, we did lose about 10 to 12 students out of our enrollment. So we would be pushing closer to 190, 195, I would say, when we announced, like everybody did, when we announced how we would be going about hybrid instruction. We had many, not just offer remote, but on enroll in our school. So there's probably about 10 to 12, if not more, students hanging out there that on enrolled that hopefully we will get back once things get back to normal, which hopefully will be sooner rather than later.
Hey, Matt, what's the tentative last date right now? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yes, I do. It's on here. The last date would be 6/16 for students, 6/17 for teachers. Wendy and I have been talking about graduation, of course, believe it or not. And we were looking at possibly 6/16 to be graduation, possibly, because right now, Kittatinny is 6/15 at last check. So they would graduate on the 15th. We could graduate on the 16th, that being our last day of school. And hopefully we can have a real graduation. The drill chart is as written. One nice thing about bringing everybody back, another nice thing, besides the obvious things about bringing everybody back, is that we don't have to run 2 fire drills and 2 security drills each month, 1 for each cohort, because now we're all 1 cohort. So the drills have been cut down. We still have to run a security drill this week, actually. That's the drill chart. Dates to remember. The trimester, the 3rd trimester, believe it or not, begins March 12th. And if you think back exactly a year from March 12th, not exactly a year, March 13th of last year was the infamous day that we shut down. So when you say that the trimester begins or the trimester ends, we went remote, if you guys recall, last year, exactly when the 3rd trimester began. So just think about how far we've come and what we've gone through in the past year. Soon after that, we have parent-teacher conferences. As normal, we always have the 1 evening conference and the 2 afternoon conference dates, 17th, 18th, and 19th. And then the report cards will be available on the 19th. And that is my report.
Awesome. Thank you. And congrats again on getting all the kids back to school. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Big credit to the staff as well for all their support. And I'm not, I can't do it by myself. The board and the staff have been supportive, both socially and emotionally and cognitively. They've all been there. We've all been putting our heads together, and we figured this thing out. So hopefully, as long as everybody stays healthy, we can keep it going.
Absolutely. Okay. Board secretary report.
I just have a reminder for the board members. Over the next week or 2, you should be receiving an email from me that's going to have a special code that you'll log in, and you'll do your financial disclosures and your personal and relative disclosures. If you are a new board member, that has to be done within 30 days after February 26th. So February 26th will be the starting point. 30 days after that, new board members have to have those disclosures in. And I will send you the information. They did change the system. So it's new this year. So they've had some bugs to work out. So if you see anything or it's a little later, I'll keep you aware of the dates and things when you have to have your stuff filed. So that's it for me.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Action items. Approval of the following routine matters. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right. So this is for the approval of the regular board minutes from the January 5th and January 25th meetings. Any comments, discussion on these items? Okay. Karen, roll call, please.
Mr. Lobb,
Yes.
Mr. Olsen,
Yeah.
Mrs. Higgins,
Yes.
Mr. Kappler,
Yes.
Mr. Niemasz.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, personnel. So, Mrs. Higgins, do we have a personnel report from this past month?
We did not have a personnel meeting this month.
Right. Okay, that's right.
So, and we only have, as you can see, we have A through F.
We didn't have a meeting because it was really routine matters, but you can see
Yes.
moving Maura Douglas into as per the assistant to the CSA job description, she received her principal cert. Congratulations, Maura. You're still in the
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations.
which allows her to finally slide into that role where which was part of the job description. So good for her. We would appoint her tonight for that. Mr. Aroni did a heck of a job, came to me and asked if there was any way if we could run a virtual choir this year. So we changed. He was approved to run a regular choir in the past. So we actually just posted for a virtual choir. He and other, and I invite other teachers to do so as well. If you have a way we can get these kids active doing things outside of the school and in addition to school like this, it's a great idea. Substitute approval and moving somebody around for a maternity leave.
Okay. Can I have a motion? Sorry, can I have a motion to move those items, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right.
Whichever way that goes, Karen.
All right. Any discussion on these topics? I think we're good. Karen, roll call.
Mr. Olsen,
Yes.
Mrs. Higgins,
Yes.
Mr. Kappler,
Yes, abstain on F.
noted. Mr. Lobb,
Yes.
Mr. Niemasz.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Curriculum and policy. Can I have a motion to move those items, please?
So moved.
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
Okay.
All right, so I do have a couple of notes for you all. I sent the minutes out very late, so I just sent it right before the meeting. Regardless, we have a couple policy alerts that we have to work through, actually quite a few. So, Jeff's going to be digging in to some policy. He's got his work cut out for him for the next meeting. Other than that, we had a couple questions from Mr. Niemasz just about whether or not we had any policies addressing situations when the board's pressed to make decisions between meetings. And we need to solicit guidance from board members. So I did not see anything in current policy. Reaching out at this point, I have an email out to Kathy Hellowa for guidance. If there's potentially, anything even just outside of policy that would help kind of guide us a little bit better in that circumstance. And I quoted your original question that you posed to me, John. So again, you would also asked if we should create our own policy. So again, I just want to see what Kathy has to say. We'll get some feedback from her and, kind of move forward in that direction. So definitely looking into that and want to kind of keep that open. Other than that, there was another item, John, that you had pointed out regarding posting on social media platforms. How should the board handle rhetoric on social media platforms? I mean, we certainly spoke quite a bit about it here this evening in person. And I did dig in a little bit. And let's see, I have included in the minutes that I sent out to you just a document that Jeff and I were working on. So you do have that as a PDF in your inbox at this point. Matt, is it possible for me to share my screen?
What are you trying to share? I might be able to get the same document up.
Oh, you're CC'd on it. But
what's that?
The formatting got a little goofed up when I PDF'd it, but you're CC'd on it.
Yeah. So
Curriculum Policy Committee, February 2021.
the agenda or the notes you were typing?
Just the notes. It's like, it has like a blue link at the top citing policy 9120.
You want me to pull that up?
Yeah, just real quick.
Yeah, I can do that.
So policy 9120, there's like a little blue link up top, a hyperlink you can click on to read the whole thing. I pulled a couple of points out of it. So again, this is not word for word. I did try to shift the entire body off to the right to show that, but it's really just, word for word cuts. All right. So, stuff that, kind of dives into a little bit of, I think, what we're dealing with. So it says the Board of Ed believes all reasonable means should be employed to keep the community served by the school district informed on matters of importance regarding district programs, finances, personnel, policies, and operations. And then next we have the board will determine which of its official actions have sufficient community impact and interest to warrant special release. Board alone will release to news media information in those matters of importance. Board president may release information regarding board actions of lesser importance as they have been recorded in the minutes of board meetings and upon the request of media representatives. There's something about photographs and pictures in there.
What was the policy number on that one?
This is 9120.
Okay.
So I'm going to skim over that part. And then I'm going to dive into, I think, like more or less really what we need to be looking at. So it says, the superintendent of schools shall direct an information program designed to acquaint residents of the community and the public generally with the achievements and the needs of the schools. As a minimum, information shall be disseminated regarding the district's educational goals, the district's guarantee of equal educational opportunity, the district's programs for basic skills improvement, special education, bilingual education, and English as a second language, summary of reports of the administration of statewide assessment tests. So, obviously like putting out district achievements such as the statewide assessment test, we do that very well. I think that gets, just on our district website, you see that pretty regularly. It says every effort shall be made to foresee and avoid problems caused by misunderstanding or lack of information. So again, I think we kind of addressed that. And then I think you get into the nuts and bolts of it here. So it says the public information program may include the publication and distribution of a district newsletter, meetings with parents or legal guardians and interested residents, a presentation and interpretation of the proposed annual budget, periodically distributed calendars and notices of events, superintendent's annual report, and a pupil handbook, as well as a release of news, other photographs of school activities for publication. Notices, publications, other written materials may be prepared in languages other than English when necessary and appropriate. And then I dug into the district public information program a little bit. Some things that can include, again, are things that, we do very regularly. It happens kind of on the calendar regardless, but that district newsletter, meetings with parents, guardians, interested residents, presentation of the proposed budget, the interpretation of the budget, the calendars, and then the superintendent's updates. But my point being, in bringing all this up, we've been talking a lot about trying to get information out and what information should be out and how we agree on the information that goes out. I think we have a policy right here that kind of guides it. So again, for us to try to, deviate from that too much, I think goes in the wrong direction. I think we have a policy that contains, exactly what we need to do and how we need to get some of that information out. And this forum right here is the best way to attack, any misinformation or to address any of those concerns. So for instance, with social media and things like that, I think the best solution is to invite people to this meeting where we can have, a little bit more of a forum and address things face to face. Outside of that, as far as what we put out, certainly can be a special release, but it should also, I think, if we were to just go by policy, fall in line with those things that we do kind of regularly in any way. So again, when we put out any kind of information or when we put that stuff out and it's approved by the board or when it falls in line with the types of information that I just talked about, we can publish that any place. So that can go on, certainly any, it can go to the newspaper, it can go to a forum, a local forum, or a Facebook group, the district website, pretty much anywhere. So again, like when it comes to getting information out and putting information out, I think this is our avenue. I think this is kind of, laid out pretty explicitly. And then aside from anything else, just inviting people to meetings is certainly part of that. So making sure that citizens are aware that we are having meetings, that topics are going to come up and that they're going to be discussed at a certain meeting is mostly kind of I think the way that we need to go about addressing some of the stuff that exists where there could be misunderstanding or concerns and things like that. So I don't know if that necessarily addresses everything. I know we had talked a lot about trying to figure out how to communicate and get information out and things like that. But I do think this is pretty explicit. I think it kind of spells out the way we should be attacking that stuff. So I'm certainly open to feedback from you all about that if you think I misconstrued this a little bit or something. But I think it's pretty blatant.
And Ben, that was 9120?
Yes.
Yeah. Jeff, sorry, were you going to chime in or?
No, I just, I think, we have to find a better way to communicate as a taxpayer / messenger of non-board business without repercussion. That's been an issue, obviously, I've had. But, there's times where we don't have to share business information, but at the time, if we have to wait for approvals of a post to be made, social media happens too fast and things go awry too quick when a simple answer of a yes or no, or maybe you need to do this or that to do that can stop a lot of it.
Yeah.
We've seen it explode too quickly when some simple communication versus no communication, because unfortunately people perceive no communication as we don't care, we don't want to, we're afraid, and it's perception. So I think we need to find a more common ground of legal way to respond to some common things without problems.
Fully agree. So a couple of thoughts. I would say, first, if everybody could take a read through that policy, let's try to keep building on this and see, maybe that policy needs an update. I don't know. I mean, social media is ever evolving. So I think we should, if we could all take a read through that, take a read through their minutes, read through the policy. I was going to say too, with regard to posting things on social media, I mean, the obvious one that comes to mind is Inside Fredon, but maybe there's another platform we could or should be posting on and stay away from that one. I think we should decide that as a board as well. So we'll see. We'll take that on. Ben, anything else from your report?
Let's see. No, I don't think so. That was the big one. And again, I just think especially after hearing Kathy's presentation to us last week, I think it is really important that we, try to adhere to a policy, as I just laid out. And I think it's important for other people, that are here this evening to understand why we need to operate the way that we do, in a full public meeting as a group. So again, it's not necessarily what I think or what John thinks as an individual outside of here in a chat room. It really kind of matters what we think as a group. And, same thing regarding our decision making and all that kind of stuff. So again, I know that it seems maybe a little bit old school, just trying to publish those types of information and just make sure that, those types of content get out, through the channels that we kind of have available to us. But I think that's kind of all we have. Again, we can certainly look into updating it. I'll contact Strauss estimate perhaps, but I don't know that we have a lot of other avenues really.
Okay.
I'd like to also say that I think having a spokesman like John as an example, as president, is the way to manage this at the time. because we can't all be in a meeting on any social media. So, we have to be very careful about, who chimes in when, and if that's in the same thread or even in the same, I don't really know the rules 100%. So I think it's important that we have that kind of spokesman to get that information out instead of just throwing it and seeing what hits and sticks. So.
And Jeff, I know you do. I think you do tend to advocate for, some kind of communication on some of these platforms. Maybe you could look into what other districts are doing and try to get some examples out there to see how they're handling it.
Yeah. What's interesting about that, John? That was the first place I went. I actually looked at other districts, and there are some very large districts in New Jersey who, actually, I saw one example. So one very large district in New Jersey that had what seemed like a media, like it almost appeared like the Board of Ed had their own, I don't know what you would want to call it, like an ambassador, like a media ambassador, somebody who basically just captured the key points from each board meeting and put that out on social media.
Right.
So it was almost like, things that were already in public, items that were already in, and points that were already being made out in public in a board meeting were presented out to the community in social media. But, we're nowhere near the size that district is.
Yeah.
And I was even trying to think how we could do something like that. And again, that's where I'm just kind of scratching my head, because maybe I'm kind of old school, but I feel like this is the place where we have discourse. I feel like this is the place where, we talk ideas out and things like that. And it's, much more productive having people come in and, talk face to face, in my mind, at a public meeting where we're allowed to, and we don't have to worry about some of these types of concerns, whether we have a quorum or whatnot. So again, it was something that I did investigate. Again, like certainly if anybody else wants to look at that on their own, absolutely.
Let me just chime into that a little bit, because I agree. I think we should have some kind of I like the idea of a snapshot of recap of the meeting, or bullet points to at least trigger some of the facts. I think that's important. The problem with some of the old school mentality is, and I agree, face-to-face is always best, person-to-person, hands belly to belly. I'm with you. The problem is, because of the shift of social media and the platform it gives people, we watch what it did to an election. We watch what it did to people in this country, good or bad. If it goes ignored when people are being harmed or helped, it's not healthy for that. So an example might be if one of our members or staff members is being called out or being challenged or being disrupted in a really negative way, and we ignore that because we don't participate in that, that's not healthy. Someone's got to pay attention, because that can make or break a company, never mind a board. So while I understand how we used to do it, today, unfortunately, social is too powerful for everyone to have a voice. And companies spend millions of dollars just paying people to monitor what's being said and how it's being said. So maybe some of our policies, not ours, maybe state and governmental policies are a bit behind on how to react to this, but I want to pay attention. If someone in our board or anybody in our school system is being mentioned, it could be a student, it could be anything. We need to know that and to be able to address it, not say, I never saw it, I don't do that stuff, and not see it. Because unfortunately, that's now on us to be able to pay attention to it. So I think we need to find some better ways to do that. But I do like the idea of a recap meeting would be at least helpful on a lot of different platforms, because at least that's factual information. It's public information, but it's being shared on a platform that other people can see versus just saying, go to our website.
The biggest challenge, though, with that, and again, I like that idea too. I like having a synopsis. I like having a capture, of the key points. But who does that, right?
Well, remember that the minutes are meant to serve that purpose.
Right.
The problem is that school boards kind of directs that the minutes don't capture much other than the vote. They don't capture the rationale or the discussion typically. I'm not a fan of that, but that's what they advocate. Secondly, we don't approve our minutes till typically the following meeting. So by then they're dated, right? So, but I would say I think these are the conversations we need to have as a board. I think that these things should be captured in policy, not just board resolution. I think it should be something that's proposed, either a modification to a policy or update or a new policy to address these things, and we get a chance to review it as a board, vote on it, and approve it. All right.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we gotta. I mean, this is obviously one of the things that has come up for the past couple months. I don't think it's going away. I'm not by any means trying to like squash this conversation or anything. It's just it seems in my mind like we have the answer. It just seems like there are certain key pieces of information and certain key things that need to get out. And it almost in my mind kind of seems like it happens very regularly. So I kind of just felt like just making sure that we get it out to all of the avenues, as it's essentially stipulated in policy, kind of alleviates some misinformation, because there you are putting out good information when it comes out regularly so everybody can see it. So again, I'm not trying to point it just to one location on the internet. I'm saying to put it out, send it to the newspaper, send it to a couple of newspapers, send it to, just get it out everywhere. So I think that's really like my big point. And then, maybe you don't have so much back channel stuff that, gets twisted or turned, or, maybe some numbers aren't, accurate and things like that. You just need people to have good information, and come to meetings. And I think, again, like we got to keep looking at it, but that was essentially my suggestion, on that.
Okay. Any other comments or discussion on this topic? Or should we take a vote? All right. Karen, roll call here.
Mrs. Higgins?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Kappler?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Lobb?
Yes.
Mr. Olsen?
Yes.
Mr. Niemasz?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Finance. Can I have a motion to move the finance items, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right. So there was a finance committee meeting. The minutes were sent out. It's been a little while. Hopefully folks had a chance to read them. Let me just scan through the items here just to see if there's anything I need to point out. Some of it was actually covered in the presentation I gave before. I think the main thing that we'd want to talk about at this point is if there's an update, or what would be the budget timeline, given that we are having a vote on the budget in April of 21. I don't know, Matt or Karen, if you want to speak to that at this point.
Yeah, you can speak to it. And Karen, feel free to step in. Karen and I spoke about actually before this meeting. So the governor's, this is why it was so tight to begin with. The governor's budget address is tomorrow at 1 o'clock. There was rumor that it was going to be pushed, but it's not. It's tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So you can tune into that. That should be interesting, actually. But when that comes out, in there, he talks about how much he's going to spend on schools and whatnot. And then within 2 days, our actual state aid numbers are released. So Karen has been working very hard to create our budget, and the budget is just about complete. But one of the she can't finalize it until the state aid numbers come out. And what we need to know from that is how much we are actually going to be losing. We have projected about 60,000, Karen, you're right, 60,000 that we're going to lose this year in state aid. And that's the number that she's working with right now. So when those actual numbers come out, so if tomorrow's Tuesday, those actual numbers will come out by Thursday. Karen would complete the budget at that point. The plan
We also
would be,
have to update the software too, so that takes a day or two sometimes.
Yep. And then the plan at that point would be to have we had a work session planned for the 8th under a normal budget calendar. Can't do that anymore. We have to back it up now. So we're going to shoot for a work session a week from tonight, actually a budget work session a week from tonight, where Karen and I would just walk the board through the budget. We don't have to do line by line unless you want to, but we'll walk you guys through the budget. We would listen to what you guys have to say about we'd answer any questions, so on. Budget work session being Monday, our due date to the county would be, we would go through the work session and you guys would approve the submission of that budget that evening so that we could submit it to the county by the 4th, Karen, correct?
That's correct.
It's due with the county by March 4th. Then the county has X amount of time to turn it around. We can then approve we can present and approve the final budget at our regular board meeting. And we'll double check on this. Karen and I were just
We'll double check the timing.
Yeah, we were brainstorming it actually right before this meeting to make sure we're on the same page. Our next regular meeting is March 22nd. We think we can do the budget presentation that evening and ask you guys to approve it that evening. Because by the 25th, what happens by the 25th? Something was on March 25th, Karen.
We have to advertise, I believe, by the 25th.
That's where you see the long ad in the newspaper that shows the budget. That has to be in by the 25th. That's right. Thank you, Karen. And then at that point, the budget process is done as far as the creation of the budget. And then we prepare, Karen prepares the actual election. Her office prepares the actual election, which is going to be a heavy lift. And she has less than a month to do that, to get for the April 20th election.
So I'll just double check all the dates in March, but definitely to the county. And then we have to advertise. We have to do that 4 days before. So Matt and I will confirm all the dates and times.
Yeah. And Karen, what's involved in terms of running the election?
I believe I have to work with the county. I've never done it before, so it's kind of all new to me. But I'll reach out. I believe they play, they'll help us a lot with it. But I'm going to find out.
And Matt, I remember that the county had asked for a judge's decision.
Yeah, they had.
Yeah, go ahead.
The County Board of Elections had to put something in the paper this past weekend. They needed it by Friday so that they could put something in by today, actually. I'm not sure exactly what the Board of Elections had to place in the newspaper.
I was wondering what that was. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but their deadline to do that was today. They needed it done. They could submit it and get it in today's paper, whatever that was. Some kind of announcement of the intent for an election or something like that, something along those lines.
Okay.
Again, first time for us as administrators, so we're working through it as well.
Okay.
But the county has been good so far with us, so we'll just keep going step by step with them.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was just reading the comments a little bit. Mr. De Palma pointed out that we could potentially have and this is off track. It goes back to the last topic, but we could maybe have a recording, a video recording of our meeting. High Point does that. I mean, at the end of each meeting, within a certain period of time, the meeting does go up on the website. It's some housekeeping. It's definitely something that somebody would have to do. So I wouldn't necessarily want our administrators to have to do that. It could be something that we, maybe have someone do for us. But
I think that has to be in bylaw too. So we have to check the bylaw.
Right. We would have to amend the bylaws. We would have to, update policy and things like that. But it is an option. And again,
actually, I do remember seeing a policy that did talk about the topic of recording meetings, and I think that what I vaguely remember, it's been a while, was that there needed to be, I think, board permission to do it. But we should go back and review the policy, see what's there, and then we can talk that through.
Yeah, but again, if and I'm just kind of going off of some of the comments that I was reading real quick. So, you have the synopsis idea. The synopsis is labor intensive. Recording a meeting seems less labor intensive. Recording a meeting and putting it out for playback, less labor intensive. And then you have the meeting up there, and anybody who ever wants to go, they can go back through meetings and they can see exactly what's on there. So I personally would be in favor of something like that. And again, I'm speaking a little bit out of turn because we did move forward from this, but I did see that in the chat. So,
Okay. We could certainly consider that. Okay. All right. So on finance, so any other questions or topics on the finance items? Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kappler,
yes.
Mr. Lobb,
Yes.
Mr. Olsen,
Yes.
Mrs. Higgins,
Yes.
Mr. Niemasz.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Buildings and grounds. I don't think there's anything on the agenda, it looks like.
No, there is not. There hasn't been for quite some time because of the lack of use of buildings from the outside.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. The other section. So any updates from the school boards, ed services?
No, I ended up missing the school board meeting last month. I'm going to try to get there next time around. They had a couple sessions coming up this week that covered a number of different topics. The one I was interested in was on Thursday evening, and that's the same time I had my governance training. But check your emails. I think you had some updates from school boards. They had a bunch of relatively short sessions that were coming up and might have some topics of interest for each of you.
Okay.
And
right.
I get regular meetings from regular updates from Andrea, but I don't know how our situation stands with them at this time. Are we part of that membership, or are we just removed still?
Yeah, we're still in the outer circle. I forget even how that is run. They have the executive board, which is the voting board, and then they have like what I refer to as the outer circle. We're still in that because I did attend the reorg meeting.
Okay.
But if we became more active, I'm sure we could work our way back in if that was something the board wanted to do. But it's a time commitment from a board member to represent our board on their board.
Right. Yeah. No, that's fine. Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's something, if other folks on the board want to see us become more active in that, and you think yourself you'd have time to do that, by all means, raise that up. I know for myself that, it's enough for me just to be focused on this board itself. So, if I had to limit what we're involved in, as much as I know that that's an important organization, we all have limits, right? So we have to be practical. But if somebody does want to step up and take that on, by all means, we can make that happen.
Well, I just wasn't sure if we had made that commitment yet or not. Because I know I have to go to, I think it's 3 meetings altogether in the year.
Yeah, there's 3 that you have to go to, yep.
Right. So, okay, that's fine. You know what? I'll reach out to Andrea and see if she can just update us at this time, and we'll see where we go from there.
Fair enough. All right. Any correspondence? We had Nikki's letter before that she read in, which was nice. Anything else come in the meantime since the last meeting? No? Okay. Old business. I don't think there's any. Anybody have old business to bring up? I think we're good. New business? Nothing. Future meeting dates. Oh, go ahead.
I would just ask one thing. It seems like, and this would be probably Karen and Matt, or maybe Karen. Some of the meeting dates. I don't know if it's just my calendar, but I don't have anything like in the next coming weeks. Like I think in past years, we had some of those meeting dates like show up on the calendar, and I was just wondering like if we could maybe get something on there for some of these meeting dates.
Now, was that your calendar that used to update it?
No,
yeah, I've had trouble with my calendar for like the past 2 months.
There was a board calendar that Ms. Jennings used to keep up with, but maybe that got lost in the shuffle with the positions.
Right.
She would keep that one.
I think there were actually 2 at one point, and then we took hers off because something was getting duplicated. But we can go. I'll ask her.
Yeah, that would really help. I'm trying to keep track of things, and just the other day I was on here trying to schedule meetings at the other place, and it was causing an issue. So I would really appreciate if some of those dates were on here. And again, maybe I'm just not on the Board of Ed calendar. So
sure. Yep,
Okay,
we can look at that.
Okay. So future meeting dates, Matt, do I have it correct that we're changing March 8th becomes March 1st?
Yeah, Karen and I are going to really comb through the budget one more time on Wednesday, at which point when we're done combing through it and we're comfortable that we can definitely have our work session on Monday, we'll set it up for Monday. They'll advertise immediately, so we can have it 48 hours ahead of time. Those dates, the dates beyond that stay the same then. It's just the things that are next to the dates where you see budget work session, adopt tentative budget, public hearing, those descriptions will change. Adopt tentative budget and public hearing would be on the same night, would be on March 22nd if our timeline holds up, which again we'll have to double check.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that'd be really good to, once we have that cleared up, to get the word out there, because we don't want folks to not be aware that we're having those budget conversations and potentially approving it on the 22nd.
Yeah, you can pencil it in on the 22nd for now.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Future committee meetings. So second Wednesday of the month. Mm-hmm. So we'll continue with that. All right. So I'm going to move to the ending public comment section. So thank you folks for hanging in there. So when recognized by the president, please state your name and address prior to commenting. All meetings at which the board transacts official business must be public. Meetings of the board are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the business of the school, and therefore not public meetings, but meetings held in public. Once the president closes oral communication, no other questions or comments will be permitted. So again, we'll open up public comment and see if anybody that's still on would like to raise a comment. Any hands up, Matt?
I don't see any, and I would usually hear them too.
Okay, we'll give it one more second.
We lost about half of our crew.
Quite a few still on though. It's nice. Okay, so no hands. We'll close public comment. Okay, closing public comment. No executive session. So just
John, could I ask, do the comments that are in the sidebar are they recorded in our meeting, or?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's kind of a new thing, right? Is to have.
I just thought that they were. I don't know why.
Because they're not taking place during their sidebar conversations, which
yeah,
technically we shouldn't even have on there anyway. The only reason I keep the chat open is in case anybody's having a problem during comment sections, so they can reach out on there. But technically, the side conversations wouldn't really be official for anything.
But if there are comments made by a
but they're not during
person,
public.
I don't know.
I don't know
if they were during public. I mean,
yeah, they're
not just saying. Do you cover them during public?
Just for the record, like past practice, at least for the the year leading into this, when I was running meetings, I was reading comments every session. So again, like that was at least the way it was running up until now. So again, like that might be the the desire of somebody who types a comment, and they may feel like they were trying to purely type their comment in and have it read. Again, like much of this tonight does look like just chat room type stuff.
Yeah.
But like if we were to go back in time and look at how we were doing things up until tonight, I would say that we did read most of the comments into the record. So I would argue that we should just enter these into the record as they stand.
All right. Well, I do have the ability to copy and paste them, which I did. I did create a Google Doc, just copied and pasted out of the chat box. I don't know if we want to take time to go back and actually read them into the minutes.
No, I think what you did is fine, and if you could just circulate that document with us, if there's something on there that we think hasn't been addressed that we want to address, then we can do that.
Yeah. I think some were genuine comments and some were not so genuine comments, like ones that they wanted addressed and ones they didn't want addressed. Let's just say that.
Sure.
Well, just again for the record, I had at least for the 12 months up until last month, read anything in chat into the public comment section. That was how it was treated. So again, I don't know that everybody's aware of how that works.
This is 5 pages on a Google Doc.
Right. Yeah, I hear you.
And I think that's the kind of thing that our policy should be updated to cover.
Right.
So we have
I think it did though. I think, didn't it say the ways you can comment? You can write a letter to the BA, or you can send an email to the BA to have it read onto record
Ahead of time.
Okay.
Yeah, the policy states that they can be read. You can submit something if you don't plan on it. Basically, if you weren't planning on attending the meeting, you can submit something to the BA ahead of time, which you could do it during normal times. It doesn't have to be a virtual meeting. You can submit. It would be correspondence. You can submit a comment ahead of time to the BA with Karen by 4 p.m. on Friday, which we've been loose with that anyway. If something came in right before the meeting, we would read it into the minutes too. That would be read into the minutes, and then we have our regular public comment time. There was no word, no mention of the chat. In fact, I wonder what other boards do as far as even enabling the chat. The only reason I see a need to enable the chat is if anybody's having audio problems, like Jack before. He was saying I can't get on, or that's why the chat is useful, I think, during a board meeting, rather than the side conversation.
Well, I'm just coming off of one other thing. Again, like I do tend to go to High Points board meetings. Also, they do read every comment into the record, and they actually don't have the ability to, or up until the last meeting, to verbalize, like, so to speak up. That wasn't there, and again, like they had to go back and correct it. But I guess my point being, like, I was monitoring chat and bringing up a couple of points. I wouldn't want to necessarily not bring up somebody's point and have that be something that they had intended to have on record, part of the public record, and then have it not be. So I guess that's the only.
So Ben, I think that if the intent is to get the comments into the record, whether we read them in or just append the document that Matt created under public comment, then I think we're covered, right?
Everybody can see them, obviously.
Agreed. I'm with you. I was only bringing it up because I don't want there to be somebody say, well, I typed it in chat and it wasn't part of public record. So that's all.
Right. Understood. So if you could circulate that document, we'll make it part of the public comment section. And again, anything that wasn't addressed that we feel like should be, then we will try and do that. Okay. No executive session. So just motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please, Karen.
Okay. Mr. Kappler,
Yes.
Mr. Lobb,
Yes.
Mr. Olsen,
Yes.
Mrs. Higgins,
Yes.
Mr. Niemasz.
Yes.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again to everybody for the long hours tonight, for people for staying with us. I'm hoping this helps us move forward. It's certainly our intent, and I think we made a lot of progress. So thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, John.
Take care.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Good night.